good afternoon, committee members and the public who may be viewing along, as well as good afternoon to our staff who are in attendance. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Members of public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. As well, a reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Members are reminded of the time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting. If members can also submit another request to speak if they require more time to ask questions or make comments. I'll now commence with roll call. Please indicate your presence when I call your name. Councillor Collins.
Good afternoon, President.
Good afternoon. Councillor Danko.
Present.
Councillor Farr.
Hello.
Hi. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Ferguson. Oh, he stepped away from his desk. Councillor Jackson.
Acting Chair, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Marula.
Madam Chair, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Pauls.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Pearson.
Good afternoon, Present.
Good afternoon. And Councillor Whitehead. Moving on, it is time to approve the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Through you, Madam Chair, we do have a few changes to today's agenda. We have 2 added delegation requests. Item 6.4, which is Garth Nelson from the Stone Centre Incorporated, respecting item 10.2, as well as added item 6.5, which is Gary Foster from the Ontario Monument Builders Association, also respecting item 10.2. And I would also ask for the committee's consideration in reordering the delegation requests respecting item 10.2 to be Gary Foster, followed by Garth Nelson, followed by Warren Haley, followed by Marty Langlois. And then we do have an added, a revised discussion item, 10.2, the cemetery's business plan, which was just revised to correct the name of a vendor. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsie Davenport. Can you just, when we get to delegations, can you call them in the sequence? I didn't get a chance to jot them down.
Through you, Madam Chair, I can absolutely do that.
Thank you, much appreciated. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. The vote will be before you electronically. Elsie Davenport, if you could please verify once the votes have been submitted, and we'll move on to the next item.
The vote carried 8-0.
Thank you. Hi, Stephanie. Moving on to the next item, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, February 19, 2021. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes from that meeting? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Farr. If there's no discussion on the minutes, the vote will pop up electronically. And it's before you now.
For you, Madam Chair, that carries 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you. The vote has carried. Moving on to requests. The delegation requests are before you from item 6.1 through to 6.5. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the delegation requests as listed? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Is that a question, Councillor Pearson, on that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, just that I approve the delegation requests as amended that LC corrected the order. Thank you.
And the vote should be before you electronically to approve those delegations as amended. And I assume that
Through you, Madam Chair,
carries?
that carries 8-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, consent items. Committee members, there are a number of advisory committee minutes before you. 7.1. 7.1A is the Waste Management Advisory Committee meeting minutes of September 28th. B is the Waste Management Advisory Committee meetings from December 2nd. C is Keep Hamilton Clean and Green Committee minutes from November 17th. D is the same committee but from January 19th. E is from Hamilton Cycling Committee on December 2nd. F is the same committee from January 6th. And G is the same committee from February 3rd. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes that are before us? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Danko. Councillor Ferguson, is that a question on the minutes?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead, please.
And so the question is around the Waste Management Advisory Committee, and I believe there was one held after the December 2nd meeting. I think it was held earlier in this new year. And I know they had on the agenda the issue of multi-residential waste and, new technologies now for these towers. It's concerning me that we have, well, there's two big applications. Councillor Farr is very aware of them because they're both in his ward, one on King Street at Caroline and another one on John Street down across from the Medical Arts. And I sent to staff a question about what, well, first of all, I asked planning staff, what are we doing to get residential multi-residential diversion rate up? Because first we're actually falling backwards now. And I saw in a report recently where we're down to 38% has been diverted from solid waste, which is going backwards. And the main issue is multi-residential. But if we're approving these new towers, and the problem has always been with multi-residential, where do you store the three lines of waste? And, one being containers, one being fibers, and the other being waste. And when I asked the applicants on those, what are you going to do to start diverting more waste from multi-residential? And these are huge buildings with hundreds of new units. And they talked about a chute that they can put at the bottom of the main chute. So you don't have to put 3 chutes in. You put 1 chute in, and every floor, before you throw your waste in, you hit a button, depending what it is. So if it's containers, you just hit containers. And staff were the view that they weren't going to support this, public works staff, to make it a requirement that planning asks for this when they get the site plan approvals done. And first of all, I want to know, did that come up at the last waste management meeting? Because this is time sensitive, because they're going to come in now for their site plan applications. And so it's very time sensitive whether we're going to require that this diversion facility be done. So is public works staff not supporting putting these 3-way diversion rates in new builds for multi-residential? And did the waste management subcommittee agree with that?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. My apologies for jumping in here. If I'm understanding Councillor Ferguson correctly, he's referring to a meeting that happened after December 2nd, in which case I would just say that those minutes are not before us at this time. And so I would recommend that this discussion wait until those minutes do come before the committee.
And one thing that I could offer, Councillor Ferguson, is we could add it to other business at the end of today's agenda so that you get that question answered today if possible. And thank you, Clerk Davenport, for.
Well, I don't agree with Clerk Davenport's recommendation. I think this is time sensitive, and I think it's critical. And it's just a simple question. When's the public works report coming to council, or when's the waste management report on this issue coming to public works to get ahead of these towers that go up to get this technology put in place? And I put that to Craig Murdoch if I can.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. Just respectfully, I would agree with your recommendation if we could add it under other business. If Councillor Ferguson is agreeable with that, that would be appropriate.
Thank you. So we are at the minutes. Councillor Ferguson, I do hear the urgency. We are in a meeting today. I'll give you an opportunity to add it to the agenda at the end. So if we could move on for approval of the minutes that are before us.
Okay, let the record show I'm being blown off on this. I don't like it. And I will bring it up later on, but I don't know why somebody just can't answer this question for me.
Councillor Ferguson. It's Stephanie. Sorry, with all due respect, you are not being blown off. Alicia is following the appropriate procedure. It is not part of the minutes that's before you, and you can definitely speak to it under other business. You are not being blown off, but Alicia is doing her job incorrectly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the vote is before colleagues. If there are no other questions related to the minutes of the committee meetings that are before committee for approval, we'll
Through
move
you,
on to
Madam.
electronic vote. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, we do have a speakers list. Councillor Danko, followed by Councillor Jackson. Thank you.
On the committees, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Councillor Danko on the minutes.
No, sorry, my question is on item 7.6. So I wasn't sure if we're doing them all together or separately, but I do have a question on 7.6.
At this point, it's just the minutes that I read into the record.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to that electronic vote to approve the committee meeting minutes that were read out.
Sorry,
The
through
vote
you,
should
Madam
come up
Chair, I
for
did
it.
have Councillor Jackson on the list as well.
Also on advisory committee meeting minutes, Councillor Jackson.
Chair Nan, my apologies. Similar to Councillor Danko, I'm on 7.3 and 7.4, please. Thank you.
Thank you, no problem. So we'll pivot right back over to that electronic vote for those committee meeting minutes. Thank you. Should be before you to vote now.
Just waiting on Councillor Farr. And that vote is carried 7-1.
Thank you, Elsie Davenport. Moving on to item 7.2, which is Bill 148, but Not Ignored Act 2019. And if you gave me a moment, colleagues, I'll just ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the Citizen Committee report from the Hamilton Cycling Committee. I believe that Councillor Pauls serves on that committee. Councillor Pauls, would you be prepared to move the recommendation that's before committee? Seconded by, is there a colleague who's willing to second? Councillor Danko, thank you. So that is before committee. Is there any discussion on item 7.2?
Through you, Madam Chair, I do have Councillor Ferguson on the speakers list.
On item 7.2, Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, can someone explain to me what a Deward bill is? A Deward, I read through the
Deward.
report, Deward, I couldn't find a definition of what this is, and we're being asked to endorse it.
It speaks to cyclists who are injured when motor vehicle doors are opened. But if there is a staff member who would like to verify.
Through the chair, it's Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation Planning and Parking. Councillor Nan is correct. It's basically a bill that obligates Hamilton or police services in general to collect and report information when people are injured by people opening their car doors, and injuring a cyclist.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other colleagues have questions or comments on the recommendation that's been moved and seconded?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. I'm not seeing any further speakers on this item.
Thank you. Committee members, the recommendation is before you for electronic vote. Please indicate.
Through you, Madam Chair, the vote is carried 9-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsie Davenport. Moving on to items 7.3 to 7. The remainder of the consent items. If I could have a mover and seconder to receive these items, we will then have them on the floor for discussion. And I believe Councillor Danko and Councillor Jackson are slated for those items. So moved by, I'll just move them by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Danko. And they're on the floor for consideration and moving to Councillor Danko. Thank you.
Thank you. So just on item 7.6, this is the creation of a temporary chief road official role. And I was wondering if I could go to staff, perhaps General Manager McKinnon, to explain what the motivation is for creating this position and what we're trying to to achieve or improve in the services that we offer.
Thank you, Councillor Danko, sorry. General Manager McKinnon.
Through you, Madam Chair, Dan McKinnon, General Manager of Public Works. So when I first became the General Manager in 2016, I inherited an assignment where we were reviewing the structure of Public Works. Core International had been brought on board to assist in that. A lot of the organizational design criteria that was established through that work has been employed in the restructuring and tweaking of Public Works over the last number of years. I had sought Core International to come back in to do a bit of a health check, to do a review after 3 years to get impressions on how things were working. I had some concerns about some risks that we were carrying as a result of the structure within Public Works, and so that report did identify the road authority role that municipalities have. The road authority is not defined in any single piece of legislation, but it is referred to. And municipalities do act as the road authority in any municipality. Because of the structure in Public Works, I had some concerns about some weaknesses in our structure and the ability for the amount of effort that was needed to ensure that the road authority role was being fulfilled adequately, and some of the issues that might essentially roll up to my position in the organization, and just my inability to be able to find time to manage those types of things. So the intent here is to create a position for 2 years and then report back to council on the findings and the learnings as a result of that. No question, the way we're using the road allowance and the expectations that we're having from our transportation network when we consider complete streets and the transportation master plan, as well as the way that we are growing transit in the community, and the way that the curbside is being managed when you think about things like Uber and Lyft and those types of things. So the idea is to really have somebody to commit to this role, spend some time creating some policy, really have an eyeball on what's going on in the city, and then, as I said, report back to council in about 1.5 years with some recommendations as to their experience over that period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor
General
Turnbull?
Manager. Thank you. So my understanding is the intention of this position is one person who will kind of oversee the use of the city right of way for within the road corridor. So things like right now, different departments, different areas of the city have jurisdiction over certain parts of that road corridor. So for example, operations and maintenance, traffic safety, construction, transit, as you mentioned, utilities, waste management, emergency services. So everybody has kind of a different perspective on the use of that corridor. But my understanding is, so the goal of this position would be to coordinate all that and make sure that all the city services are accommodated. And, just some things that come to mind are things like coordinating construction work with traffic safety improvements and that kind of thing. Is that kind of the intention here?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. That last one is probably the one that is of greatest concern to me recently, is this idea of one of the nice things that's going on in Hamilton is just the sheer volume of development that's happening. But when we have to start closing lanes and closing roads, creates all kinds of challenges for us. So developing some policy around that, as well as I mentioned, kind of having an eye on that to help manage that is going to be one of the key roles that this position will play, certainly over the short term.
Thank you. Looking forward to this. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Moving on to Councillor Jackson, is it also on 7.6 or on to another item?
Chair Nance, 7.3, so I'll wait to see if you've exhausted 7.6.
Much appreciated. Any other colleagues on 7.6? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 7.3. Councillor Jackson, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chair Nance. So in light of all the stories that occur and regarding Shadok and other different things that have happened in our community, I always like to highlight from a positive standpoint, if General Manager McKinnon or Senior Director Andrew Grice are available, please. 7.3, the 2020 annual drinking water, some 80 odd pages of what we have to submit to the ministry, Chair Nan, and just for public consumption for our community to know exactly how pristine, clean, healthy our drinking water is and how the Department of Hamilton Water Services manages it. Maybe just a summation from either General Manager McKinnon or Senior Director Grice, please.
Sure. Through the chair, Andrew Grice, Director of Hamilton Water. So thank you, Councillor Jackson. This certainly is a very important report for us. You will likely recall that with the regulated business that we're in of providing drinking water to our customers, that is something that is under a microscope, and we do a lot of reporting to make sure that we are open and transparent with everything that is going on in our system. Council is the owner of our drinking water system, and Hamilton Water staff act as our operating authority. So this report in front of you today lays out all of the activities that would have occurred in the last year, including the inspections that were conducted by the ministries, a summary of all the meetings that we would have to ensure that we are checking off everything that we need to do in order to satisfy and operate our system. At the end of the day, we do have a very robust and functional system. We have some of the best drinking water in the province. You will see in an upcoming report, we do have some aging infrastructure and a large number of breaks, but overall, the quality of our drinking water remains top notch. And that is certainly thanks to the efforts of all of our staff that are out there every single day doing everything they can to make sure that we are providing safe, clean drinking water for our customers.
That is an awesome reassurance, Senior Director Grice. Thank you very much. And then Chair Nan, I just had a question on 7.4 once 7.3 is done. Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second, Councillor Jackson. I saw that General Manager McKinnon had indicated he'd like to speak as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe just as a follow-up to Andrew, one of the things that compels us to provide this report on an annual basis around the drinking water quality management standard, which is a provincial regulation, is the quality management program that we have. And so Andrew and his team are working very hard to establish our wastewater quality management system, and likely in the future a stormwater quality management system. So when we talk about quality management systems, this is one of the benefits that the community will enjoy as a result of that, is this transparency and this reporting out of important information that the community should and it will receive. And so when we talk about the wastewater quality management system, although we're not compelled by the province to do that, we are implementing that in Hamilton for a number of reasons, but one of them is this transparency piece, so that major capital projects, any adverse operating conditions, any weaknesses in our systems get reported out so that the community can kind of have a sense of the health of the system and the program. So I just wanted to add that because the piece that's in front of you on the agenda today is strictly around drinking water, but we are implementing one on the wastewater side currently as well.
Thank you, General Manager McKinnon. And Chair Nan, I just brought my prop of the Hamilton drinking water that I'm enjoying as the two gentlemen were providing answers. Thanks, Chair Nan. I'll wait till 7.4.
Nicely done, Councillor Jackson. So also on the agenda right now for discussion are item 7.4, which is the annual bypass report, as well as item 7.5, the water main break. So not sure if other colleagues wanted more detail on that. Councillor Farr, go for it.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, Mrs. Chair. Thank you, Narinder. 7.5, is that okay right now? I heard you just mention it. Yeah, I just want to focus on Appendix B, to whomever on staff can help me here, and highlight failures on John Street North due to the ground movement. John is constantly on this list, and I just want to factor in not only this 2020 list that's before us in Appendix B, but 2019, 2018, 2017, 16, 15, and on and on and on. Older part of the city, understandable. I was actually, I often look at this and think, wow, up on the older parts of the suburbs and the mountain, there's consistent issues as well. So everyone is feeling a bit of the water main pain, I guess. But the previous years, factor in the number of road cuts. When you look at John Street, it's not pretty. It looks like an asphalt quilt, and it just gets more and more spotty. Factor in a secondary plan that this council unanimously approved, and a West Harbor plan. And you have to ask yourself, at what point do we stop the repair mode and get into replace mode in a situation like this? We have, I think, if we could look at this more fully, and I do not want to do that today. I'm just looking for a general response, and maybe we can have an offline meeting with the Ward 2 councillor. But we, I believe, have an opportunity to take this perennial pipe busting corridor and encourage major intensification, because when you look at our secondary plan, there is so much potential with surface asphalt parking lots attached to John Street in the John Hewson, Catherine area, and certainly people have kicked the tires. Water knows that. There's at least 4 that have been kicking the tires in the last 3 years, but I think they look at infrastructure. And it's hard to measure who's scared away just by that, but it's a bit frustrating for me. Not just that, but the aesthetics and the fact that we seem to be just, perpetually going in and making repairs. So generally, through you, Chair, at what point can we take a look at something like that, factor in all those things I just mentioned, and get into replacement mode? We know it's an way underserviced area. The pipes are way too small for what we're planning for there. So if there's someone that can help with that.
Through you, Madam Chair.
There is, yes, a very apt person to be able to help us with that. Go ahead, General Manager. And I'll pass the chair on to Councillor Van Der Reek when she's ready. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, interesting question for sure. There's a few things converging there. First of all, there's the asset management piece of it, and which really has nothing to do with growth. And so no question, we have a lot of water main pipe in our city, especially in the downtown core, that is either at or well exceeded its expected life cycle. The other challenge, as Councillor Farr, you indicate, is being prepared and ready for growth. One of the challenges that I know Council has done their best to manage is the idea that until we know what's coming, we have a difficulty building it because of our DC reserves and that kind of thing. We kind of have a model of just-in-time delivery as it relates to new growth and development. I think the work that we're doing around the AEGD currently around some wastewater pumping stations to try to very quickly ensure that we are ready and able to accept some of the exciting growth that's happening around the airport is a perfect example of that. I could certainly take that away and work with Jason Thorne's team to, and maybe even take it offline with you to look at what kind of an effort that would be to study if we wanted to focus on a particular corridor or area of the city and kind of bring back a high level schedule and budget with what that might cost to increase services in a specific area like that. We had done a study on the wastewater side a couple of years ago. One of the challenges is, and I'm certainly no planning expert, but the types of densities that are allowed by zoning don't often or always reflect the actual proposals that you're going to receive. So to build out the infrastructure to support the densities that are identified in the zoning, you may end up overbuilding those types of putting in pipe that's just too big. And so happy to take this offline with you, Councillor, if you want to work with maybe Jason Thorne and myself to kind of, I guess, scope it out and just to get a sense of what kind of money we'd be looking at and kind of the issues that go along with that.
I would really appreciate that. And you said, Dan, quote, until we know what's coming, end quote, and it was a big part of your response, and I appreciate that. But through you, Chair, didn't we start working on a multi-million-dollar infrastructure plan and you used the the AEGD as an example? We started a lot of that work, multi-million-dollar work, before we knew a lot of these companies that we announced in the last year and a half came on board. So and that was based on making a judgment call that we would fulfill our plan. Well, we have plans. We have West Harbor plans. We have setting sail secondary plans. I'm not asking to replace all the pipes, but John is a crucial link where a great deal of an intensity. And in some of those cases, those plans actually you do know because they were approved by planning committee. So you know what, I'll let you retort since I'm editorializing a little too, but I definitely will take you up on an offline conversation. It actually came up a few days ago with another development elsewhere in downtown where I got all staff together. And yeah, I'm not looking to jump any queues on some major infrastructure work, but when you look at historically what's gone on John Street North and look at two major, fairly recently voted on and approved unanimously plans for growth. And then you look at generally the conversation we're having, especially lately, on where we should grow smartly. I think it's a prime candidate. But through you, Chair, if Dan wants to respond, I'll just listen, and I appreciate the answer to this point. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, I think the AEGD is an excellent example. So through the master planning process is typically where we would identify the growth areas, those nodes where we're going to see a lot of intensification or growth from an ICI perspective, and then we would design the appropriate facilities to accommodate that growth. And so through the master planning process, I believe we identified the Dickinson Trunk. So this is a perfect example because all of a sudden the growth came and it was going to be there before the Dickinson Trunk was ready. And so we had to react very quickly to do these upgrades to these 3 separate wastewater pump stations and then put in a new force main and line an existing sewer. So I think that really highlights all the challenges that you're basically articulating, is that we have these master plans that look out over 10 years. But when growth happens faster and sooner than that, we have to react to it. And that's the challenge, is how do we react to it? And I think your example is another really good example of how do we react to it when, you know, for lack of a better way to express it, is when it's not in our master plan, but we can see this happening. How do we try to get ahead of that? So happy to take that offline.
Thank you, General Manager McKinnon. Before I pass the chair over, I noticed that Director Grice also wanted to comment on this this item as well. And before I indicate for you, Director Grice, Councillor Vanderbeek, we're on item 7.5. There's still opportunity to discuss 7.4 and 7.6. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Grice.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, through the chair. Not on the particular subject that Dan and Jason were just, or Councillor Farr were just talking about, but during agenda review last week, Councillor Nan asked about kind of historical break history. So we have put together a map that highlights in a pictorial fashion where the breaks have occurred over the last 4 years. We do not have that in time to update it for the agenda today, but certainly we can send that out and update the agenda afterwards. Gives a good visual of where breaks have occurred from 2017 through current time.
Much appreciated. So if that exhausts discussion on 7.5, Councillor Vanderbeek, I formally move the chair back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I apologize for being late. I'm getting from Board of Health to Public Works for me. Took a little longer than usual. Anyway, so I have on the speakers list Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Pauls. Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. And I just wanted to just echo what Councillor Jackson said. It's a 100-page report on Appendix A. And it's a very, very good report card. And one of the most important, probably the most important thing we do to our citizens is provide them clean, safe water into their homes and businesses. But Andrew, just one quick question. On page 19 is the audit, and everyone's been action complete, except number 8, 9, and 10, where it says actions in progress. Is that because they're always going to be in progress?
Andrew?
So it's on page 19.
Through the chair, I'm just flipping there. Unfortunately, it's a large file, so it takes.
It is a large file.
To load on my computer.
It's items 9, 10, and 11.
So through the chair, these are things that we are currently working on. So if I look at number 11, for example, there was changes to how we have to record and plan for our E2 plan. So that was a gap that was identified. I believe that has now been corrected, and that is updated appropriately with the agencies that are required to know. So no, these will not stay on here forever. These are things that we do plan and action. Some of them just take a little bit of time to work their way through, but ultimately these will have a checkbox at some time in the near future.
Okay, thank you. And so none of these 3 items that are actions in progress are putting the public at risk, though, are they?
Through the chair, absolutely not. As I mentioned when Councillor Jackson asked this question, that we are under a microscope from an inspection perspective. So, you know, we get findings and we find things ourselves, and we're look at things very closely to make sure that we have all of our I's dots and all our T's crossed. But certainly by no means is anything on here put our public health at risk.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I just had to ask the question because it's out there and it was not complete from the audit. I just want to get clarity on that. And then, Andrew, on page 100 is the Linden Water Well, and last time I asked about when the well water advisory will be lifted after the investments that have been made in that facility, I was told the spring, and I know we're only 2 days into spring, but do you have any update when you'll have enough tests done to be able to advise the people in Linden no longer have to boil their water after all these years?
So through the chair, we're continuing to work with public health on that. When I had mentioned spring before, it was looking more towards kind of late spring into the summer. That new well system was commissioned in late June, early July. So public health requested a full year of analysis before committing to evaluate and potentially lift the drinking water advisory. So we'll be looking at June into July this year. But so far, public health has been reviewing the data we have at our hands, and certainly everything is looking very positive to date.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pauls, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Oh, Dan. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. General Manager McKinnon, did you have something else to say? I didn't mean to ignore you.
No, that's quite all right. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would have jumped in eventually. I know it was not intentional, but the Linden drinking water system does not have a boil water advisory. It's a drinking water advisory, and it may feel like nuance, but it is important to just clarify that. So the Linden system has a drinking water advisory, and all drinking water advisories are always issued by public health. So I just wanted to correct the record there. So.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Councillor Pauls, I apologize. The floor is yours now.
No problem. I was wondering on 7.5, I was noticing the annual water break in my ward, and I was surprised how many there were. I was wondering if General Manager Dan McKinnon, can you explain, maybe I should know this, but I don't, what does ground movement means and corrosion? I know the actual word, what they mean, but what does it mean with the water breaks?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So the general term of ground movement usually relates to frost. One of the challenges that we have in the city of Hamilton, and especially in the mountain wards, is as you get closer to the escarpment, the depth of overburden or the soil that resides on top of the rock gets shallower and shallower. And the belief is that the transmission of frost into a rock trench happens faster than it will through a soil trench. And so when you get frost into these trenches, it moves things around, especially as it in the freeze cycle, and then again in the thaw cycle, as well as with the traffic on the roadway over top of it. So it's all of those forces that work to create a movement within inside the trench, and these old water mains get brittle, and then it can create a leak either through a fracture or through a displaced joint or something like that. And then if the corrosion is actually just essentially a chemical reaction that happens with dissimilar types of metal. So whether it's the copper where it's connected to a cast iron main, or a lead service where it's connected to a ductile main, or different pieces like that. So those are typical. Hamilton's not unique in that regard, other than maybe the fact that we have so many water mains that reside in rock trenches. That's Hamilton probably has a disproportionate amount of those. So it's all of those things combined.
Thank you. And therefore, is there any way we could avoid this, or is it an ongoing thing?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's one of those things that we're going to have to manage over the long term. I'd have to get Andrew to confirm. I do believe that we've changed our depth of bury. So the deeper you bury the pipe, the more the safer it is from frost, the less chance that it's going to be impacted by frost. But that does drive up your costs for installation and repair, because now you have to dig deeper. And when you're digging in a rock trench again, digging in rock trenches is very, very expensive because of the equipment that you have to use to break the trench. So there are tactics to do this. Sometimes we insulate water mains as well. Sometimes we'll put in a larger diameter main as opposed to a smaller one, or vice versa, depending on the flow, so that we don't have water sitting around. But I know that Andrew's team is constantly looking at this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair Vander Beek. As I continue to drink Hamilton Safe Tap drinking water during these discussions. Thank you. 7.4, please. A report authored by Director Nick Winters, Senior Director Grice, I think council this term had asked, instead of, if you will, hearing about bypasses being needed with our system and discharges into the natural environment, I think council asked for a more robust, proactive reporting as to what happened each year. I noticed last year we had 12 bypasses. Maybe Director Grice, you can explain to the community exactly quickly what the bypass is needed for, and does that seem to be an average number that our community and our city, given some old infrastructure, may have to endure in terms of for years to come, and how your team at Hamilton Wastewater handles it. Through you, Chair Vanderbeek, please.
Thank you, Andrew.
So through the chair, Andrew Grice, Director of Hamilton Water. I'm going to kick this over to Nick and his team because they've done a lot of hard work to prepare this. But I will say you are correct, Councillor Jackson. This is a relatively new request. Shortly after this term of council was elected, there was a request for more frequent reporting of our bypasses and overflows. And we've also since moved to more of a real-time reporting live on our website. But in terms of your specific questions, I will throw it over to Nick to respond.
Nick.
Thank you, Senior Director. Director Winters, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, Nick Winters, Director of Operations for Hamilton Water. So to answer your specific questions, Councillor Jackson, I think with the number of bypasses, in and around the number of 12 is a typical average that we see year over year. Certainly the report highlights that there was a much higher number of that than that in 2019 as a result of the high lake water levels we were experiencing and inflow from the lake into the sewer system. With regards to the need to bypass at the wastewater treatment plant, that's very much about two things: the protection of the infrastructure at the wastewater facility itself, but also the protection of the community, eliminating the risk of backups into people's basements through the sewer system. It all comes down to the amount of flow that we receive at the wastewater treatment plant as a result of our combined sewer system, and based on the nature of the wet weather we receive in any given year or any given wet weather event. With regards to protecting the infrastructure at the wastewater treatment plant, wastewater treatment is largely a biological process. We use bacteria in the water or in the wastewater to break down a number of components, and if we receive too much flow through certain areas of the treatment plant, we can wash out that bacteria, which would have a detrimental effect on our ability to treat wastewater on an ongoing basis. It would take us months to reseed the plant and get us back to a level of performance that's expected to us by our regulator and our community.
Councillor?
Thank you, Director Winters. I'm satisfied with that answer, and I really dig that COVID look, Director Winters. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I see no further speakers. Oh, Dan?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize, I'm in a chatty mood today. I just wanted to emphasize for the folks who are maybe watching at home that when we talk about combined sewer overflows, we're talking about stormwater, we're talking about rain events, we're talking about snow melt. Those are the things that drive our bypasses and our overflows. It really is less to do with the wastewater system and absolutely about the wet weather that we receive. And so I appreciate some folks who may be watching, maybe hearing this information for the first time, or maybe aren't as familiar with it as others. So I just wanted to emphasize that these reports are really reflecting what happens to our system when we experience storms and snow melt. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so now I did come in a little late to this. So I'm understanding that we were dealing with 7.3 to 7.6. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. That is correct, and we do have a mover in Councillor Jackson and a seconder in Councillor Danko.
Terrific. So the motion is to receive or to approve? To receive these reports?
To receive, that's correct.
Thank you. So moving to receive the reports, the vote should be on your screen soon. And there it is. Thank you, and that carries 9-0. I do have a further question for the, did that include 7.6?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it did.
Okay, so we're on 7.7, which is intersection control for Ward 9. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report? Councillor Jackson, and seconded by Councillor Pauls, perhaps? Councillor Danko? Sorry, who's seconding it? Councillor Pauls. Thank you. We will require an electronic vote. Councillor Jackson, did you have anything you wanted to say about that? No? Okay, good. Just there's the electronic vote, folks. And that's approved 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, which is public hearings, written delegations, and virtual delegations. And the first person on the list is Robert Cook, Ontario Waste Management Association, respecting an endorsement of the City of St. Catharines resolution on development approval requirements for landfills. Mr. Cook, are you on line with us?
I am. Hopefully you can hear me, Madam Chair.
I hear you just fine. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. So thank you to committee members and staff. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I will be as brief as I can, as I know you have a full agenda and your time's valuable. So my name is Rob Cook, and I'm here today representing the Ontario Waste Management Association. I'm recently semi-retired from that organization, having served as its CEO for the past 20 years. Oh, there is some information attached to your agenda that I would refer you to, most importantly being a City of St. Catharines resolution, which was passed in October, percolated to all Ontario municipalities with a request for support, and I will be speaking to that in my presentation today. So I do have a PowerPoint, and I'll just move to share screen if you'll bear with me. Okay, so just really quickly, a little bit about who OWMA is. We are a not-for-profit organization representing stakeholders in the Ontario waste management sector. Bit of a unique organization in that it has both private sector and municipal representation, each treated equally with equal voting rights. Currently, the organization has 64 private sector companies and 65 municipalities, upper, single, and lower tier. The City of St. Catharines, of Hamilton, has been a longtime member of the organization, a valued member, and the connectivity between the city and the association is to the staff. So very briefly, why we're here today, we're delegating to the committee to ask the committee to support the resolution going to council, City of Hamilton, or City of St. Catharines, or your own resolution in respect to Bill 197. Bill 197, just for some background information, is the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act of 2020, and it deals with COVID-19 issues specifically. However, it does in the back in the schedule contain changes to other legislation, including the Environmental Assessment Act. The Act has received royal assent, and the provisions under Schedule 6 are in place today and are having an impact on municipal autonomy and waste management, which I'll talk about in a little more detail. So just real quickly, why are we here? Why do we need your support? St. Catharines and I think a number of municipalities, many municipalities are requesting a degree of solidarity from municipal councils on this issue. Many of your neighbors, the region of Niagara, Norfolk, Haldimand, have approved this resolution or supported the St. Catharines resolution. We are speaking with Halton. We're scheduled at the Region Appeal. City of Toronto is moving this through their system. In total, as of today, we have 66 municipalities that have supported this resolution or a similar resolution. And they represent about 2.4 million taxpayers. So the bill itself in this issue creates two issues. One, it undermines municipal autonomy, and it will dramatically impact the ability to approve landfills and potentially other waste management infrastructure. And the association needs your support to backstop advocacy efforts that will be taking place at Queen's Park with the Ministry of the Environment and the government to try and affect some change to the provisions in Bill 197. And of course, there are local companies and businesses that have investments and jobs in the city of Hamilton that could be negatively impacted by this bill. So very briefly, municipal economy. So this change to the Environmental Assessment Act establishes a new principle relative to municipal relationships. It provides for a veto for municipalities to exercise on developments that are outside their municipal boundary in an adjacent municipality. So Bill 197 essentially empowers multiple municipalities to veto the development of a landfill project within 3.5 kilometers of a zone inside the boundary of an adjacent municipality, even if the host municipality supports the development. So municipalities that have brought this issue to our attention are really looking on the adjacent municipality provision of Bill 197 as overreach. The potential of overreach, the consequences, I think, are probably obvious. They're real, they're substantial. We have been telling municipalities that it's potentially the thin edge of the wedge, landfill development today, but if this principle remains unchallenged, what could be next? Other waste management?
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
I'm afraid you're at your end of your 5 minutes. I'm going to need a motion from someone to extend your time. And I can't see them because you're sharing. So okay. I wonder if someone's willing to do that, could you put it in the chat, please?
I'll just jump in, Councillor Farr. I'll extend for a few minutes.
Okay, and I need a seconder. Can someone unmute themselves and second extending for a couple of minutes?
I will, yes. Madam Chair. It's yes. Councillor Collins.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Collins to extend the time for this presentation past the 5-minute deadline. I'd like him to finish up. You will need to electronic vote, please. And that carries 9-0. Mr. Cook, you can carry on to the end of your presentation here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and committee members. So there are potentially other types of developments that this principle could apply to. We know already in the region of Durham, there's been opposition from a local municipality looking to veto an anaerobic digestion facility for organic waste and mixed waste processing for multi-residential waste and recycling. So the overreach is real. It does compromise the autonomy and the ability and the authority of elected officials to make decisions in the best interests of their local communities. We'll point out that Bill 197 does contain supportable change. In the past, the Minister of the Environment approved landfills, irrespective of the position of the municipality they were in. Bill 197 does change that the host municipality has the final say. This issue is around the adjoining municipalities within 3.5 kilometers. I'm asking committee to consider supporting St. Catherine's resolution or your own resolution regarding the adjacent municipality issue only, and requesting that Hamilton City Council support that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Would you mind unsharing your presentation so that I can see the other councillors?
I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I do apologize for the interruption, but it's part of the process. Okay. I don't see any speakers requesting questions, so I would need a mover and a seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Farr. Thank you. And there'll be an electronic vote on that. And that carries 8-0. Thank you, Mr. Cook. I appreciate you coming forward. And we'll be moving on to 8.2. The proposed permanent closure of a portion of public unassumed alley abutting 1044 Cannon Street East in Hamilton. And is there someone going to speak to that? Do we know? So what do I do with that? Follow the roadmap. Go to the roadmap. Sorry, my apologies. As required under the city's bylaw, oh yes, I get it now. As required under the city's bylaw 14-204, a public meeting is required. Notice of this public meeting was provided and posted on the City of Hamilton's website. The notice advised that anyone whose lands are prejudicially affected may appear before the committee. The clerk is advised that no one has pre-registered to be a virtual delegate. As we do not have any members of the public registered to speak on the item, may I have a mover and seconder to close the public meeting? So I understand that Councillor Nan would like to speak to it. Do I do that before I close the meeting, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. Unless Councillor Nan wishes to speak to the closure of the public meeting, then I would say we take the vote on the closure first and then move to the actual report, in which case we would call on Councillor Nan.
Great. Councillor Nan, you're okay with that? Okay, thank you. So we need a mover and a seconder to close the public meeting. Councillor Nan's moving it, Councillor Pearson seconding it. Thank you, and we will require an electronic vote. So this is to close the public meeting. And the vote is on the screen. Thank you, and that carries 9-0. Okay, we will, the public meeting is now closed. Are there any questions or any discussion from the committee respecting the report? So I have Councillor Nan. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek. Just a couple of comments that the Ward 3 office is aware of the closure and sale of the public unassumed alleyway abutting 1044 Cannon Street East. My understanding is that the applicant is going to be paying market value for the land and that the 20 abutting landowners were circulated on the sale. There was 2 objections from abutting landowners, and one of the objections was resolved, and the applicant had adjusted their application in order to address that issue. And the landowner has also, the new that's it. That the objection that we knew on record and that my office had been notified about was resolved in the application process. So just wanted to thank the folks involved in the application as well as staff for shepherding the project through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. So I will need a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. I have a moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Pearson, and that approves the recommendations in the report. We will need an electronic vote. And it's on the screen. And that carries 9-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.6, which is Gary Foster, Ontario Monument Builders Association, respecting item 10.2, the cemetery's business plan, and Hamilton City Cemeteries bylaw update. I'd like to call upon Gary Foster from the Ontario Monument Builders Association to delegate. Please, sir, unmute your microphone and turn on your video, and you have 5 minutes to present.
You should be able to see and hear me by now. I'm hoping. I just did the unmute process. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the Public Works Committee for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the Monument Builders of Hamilton. My name is Gary Foster, and I've been involved with government relations on behalf of the Ontario Monument Builders Association for over 20 years and currently serve as Executive Director. I have been invited here today by the MBH, Monument Builders of Hamilton, to provide you with a broader perspective on the implications of the sale of monuments and markers by cemetery staff. I'd like to take a moment to share with you the unique properties of cemetery memorialization that makes this initiative particularly damaging to these long-standing craft businesses and their customers. All those that have been touched by the death of a loved one know how disorienting the sudden whirlwind of activity is while planning for a funeral service and the permanent resting place of their loved ones. The psychological vulnerability of these consumers is well documented. It is the position of the Ontario Monument Builders Association that consumer protection needs to be the critical consideration guiding policymakers in the bereavement sector. It is our belief that a competitive marketplace with many suppliers provides the best and most cost-effective consumer protection. Unfortunately, experience has shown that when cemeteries embark on the sale of monuments and related services, consumer choice is greatly compromised. Typically, within short order, these craft businesses are bankrupted and permanently disappear, taking their unique skills with them. Cemeteries, through their bylaws, regulate the activity of monument builders and their customers. Cemetery managers and staff play a critical oversight role in controlling the size of monuments, their placement, design approvals, and ultimately releasing installation certificates for the gravesite. Once your regulator becomes your competitor, there is distortion in the marketplace that quickly leads to business collapse. In most industries, regulators are not allowed to sell the products they regulate because of the inherent unfairness. Long gone are appliance sales by public utilities. The problem here is more than an overlap in providing similar services, such as golf courses and fitness facilities. Private golf courses and fitness centers would not last long if they needed permission to provide services on a per-customer basis from the municipally operated facility. When the provincial government framed the current regulatory legislation, the Funeral, Burial, and Cremation Services Act 2002, much of the stakeholder consultation addressed consumer protection through the maintenance of a level playing field. They recognize that when cemeteries engage in the sale of monuments, the provision of funeral services, and other non-traditional goods and services, consumer choice and protection is at risk. These services are provided under the benign label of one-stop shopping. We do not even allow our most trusted profession, medical doctors, the right to sell drugs, even though it would be more convenient. In the 20 years since the legislation passed, the ability to maintain fairness in the marketplace and provide consumer protection under one-stop shopping has proven a failure. Indeed, 4 months ago, the Auditor General's Office of Ontario released a scathing report on the failure of the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, the industry-funded agency charged with applying and enforcing the provincial legislation, with failure to protect consumers. Furthermore, evidence of regulatory capture by large Toronto-based cemetery groups is rampant. Industry consumer groups such as the Memorial Society, now known as FAMS, and the recently formed Council for Consumer and Industry Fairness and Bereavement now recognize that the greatest threat to consumer protection in the bereavement sector comes from one-stop shopping cemeteries. Most municipally operated cemeteries do not engage in these commercial ventures as they are wary of putting long-standing local craft businesses out of business and potentially upsetting or offending their taxpayers during the purchase of a complicated, emotional, and costly purchase.
You have 30 seconds left, sir.
Unfortunately, within today's time constraints, the opportunity to provide a detailed review of the cemetery's business plan is not possible. A quick commentary, however. I believe that logical inconsistencies and missing statistics in this report will challenge your ability to make a fair decision today. Finally, on behalf of the MBH, we ask that the request by the cemetery manager to sell monuments be denied, that staff prepare a thorough review of the pricing of existing services which appear to be below market value, and the construction of a crematorium. This common source of cemetery income does not even receive consideration in this report. In the presentations ahead, members of the HBC will be sharing with you the impact that the proposed sale of monuments has already had on them personally and their future survivals as a business. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Good timing. I don't see anyone. Oh, Councillor Farr. Councillor Farr has a question.
Oh.
Not hearing you, Councillor Farr. I'm sure you're being eloquent.
Yes, sure. No, not quite. I appreciate it. I was taking some notes here. I heard you say near the end, logical inconsistencies and something about statistics. I was just wanted to jot that down.
Well, this is kind of a new file to me. So all I've got to draw upon to kind of review the situation for you guys is the report I've received. And there's not a lot, there's an entire amount of information missing in the report to do with other services. Cemeteries, all they're listing right now is the cost of a lot sale, for example, and yet the opening and closing of lots generates much for equal revenue. The opening and closing of niches also represents considerable revenue, and other things. And I really difficult to judge and difficult for you guys to judge. Are you getting fair market value for those services? Elsewhere, those services run for opening a grave $600 to $1,000. I don't imagine. Opening and closing of a niche cover for an interment ranges from $150 to $500. Not to say you take advantage of your customers, but that information is missing. Logical inconsistencies is a reference to the fact that municipal cemeteries are in the text. We're looking at municipal cemeteries regularly sell monuments, and the author had to go all the way to Calgary and Edmonton to find evidence of such. And there's only one other municipality doing it in Ontario, and that's Oshawa. So it would be a precedent setting, and just going through the text and the numbers and the charts, they weren't really lining up for me at first look.
Okay, sorry, Gary. I just wanted you to fill in a blank there. You said another phrase after logical inconsistencies and blank blank. Just need 2 words for an answer.
Logical inconsistencies.
And?
Oh, I think it was just missing statistics.
That's it.
Statistics.
Okay, so I thought so. Something about statistics. Yeah. So, and you just actually sort of hit on where I was going to go through you, Chair. We do have a bit of a Gantt chart on past communications on this particular item, and then I heard you say you just joined the file. So have you not had an opportunity to release or to have a look at what's in the report and the information that was shared August 20th, 2018, September 18th, 2018, October 18th, 2018, January 15, 2019, November 2019. You hadn't had a look at the history of council and staff dealing with this?
I'm afraid that just a rather brief summary is provided in this report and some other items, but pretty brief and pretty scant at that. And I do apologize. I just took over the position late last year from my predecessor, and so I am bringing myself up to speed here. But also,
no problem.
I didn't have access to the Lee and Associates report either, and I think that's the genesis of this venture on the part of the city of Hamilton lies within that analysis, and that has not been made readily available either.
Okay, I'll ask staff at the appropriate time, Madam Chair. I did hear you say, though, Gary, in your answer to me that Oshawa is doing this, selling monuments, the city.
Yes, they
but
did.
in the same breath, through the chair, you said that we would be precedent setting. How would we be precedent setting if someone's already?
On any kind of a scale, you're correct. I did misspeak on that.
Okay, man. All right, thanks. I appreciate the learning more about this, and certainly I look forward to investigating further. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank
you, sir. Thank you, sir. I don't have any other requests to speak, so we'll be moving on to Warren Haley.
No.
Am I wrong? Oh, I'm sorry. I must have turned 2 pages. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I apologize, Mr. Nelson. I turned 2 pages at once. I have a roadmap here, so I'm following it. Just not very well, obviously. Anyway, Garth Nelson, the Stone Center, Inc., respecting the cemetery's business plan and the City of Hamilton Cemetery's bylaw update. Sir, you are welcome to start at any point. If you please unmute yourself, which I think you've already done, and turn on your video, you will have 5 minutes to present, and I'll start the timer when you start talking.
Madam Chair and councillors, my name is Gareth Nelson. I own and operate the Stone Center, Inc. We service all cemeteries.
Mr. Nelson, I apologize for interrupting you. I think maybe you need to turn your video off because your audio is not coming through clearly. If you could turn that off, so then try and we'll see if it works better then. Can you just say something so I can hear whether it's coming through clearly?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's much better. I haven't started your time yet. I'll start it when you begin now.
Madam Chair and councillors, my name is Gareth Nelson. I own and operate the Stone Center, Inc. We service all of cemeteries throughout southwestern Ontario, including all of the Hamilton area cemeteries, and have a substantial amount of experience. I'm here to address the matter of the cemetery's business plan, which includes their intention to sell monuments. You paid over $160,000 to the Lees Associates to make suggestions to improve the situation in your cemetery. The Lees report did not, as far as I know, say to start selling monuments and put local monument companies out of business. I'm going to tell you about a very similar situation in London, Ontario. There were 4 major cemeteries in the city, and they all started selling monuments. Gone now are Geared Cut Stone, London Marble and Granite, Dale Monuments, Dancy Memorials, Pride Memorials, Yukowski Monuments, and Smythe Monuments. There were 25 jobs lost among these companies. There was also 1 monument company left in London, Ideal Monuments, and at that company, a further 10 people lost their jobs. I have the following comments on the Hamilton Cemetery's business plan. 1, Hamilton's lot prices are far below what other cemeteries are selling lots for in other cities. Increases to date have been conservative and are well below the other municipal cemeteries. 2, Hamilton really has no competition from other cemeteries. The Catholic cemeteries are religious-based. Arbor is a commercial cemetery with one purpose, and the people from the outlying areas will be buried where they live. 3, monuments are a custom-made product. They are prone to public relations problems, especially if you don't know what you're doing. In other areas where cemeteries are selling monuments, there is a return rate of 1/3 of the monuments delivered due to the ordering errors, mistakes on the designs, cemetery staff problems, and the clients not liking the end product. 4, monument companies do not have this problem because they know the products that they are and are experienced, and that prevents these problems in the first place. Cemetery staff, on the other hand, have little experience.
Oops. We seem to have lost him. Oh, Mr. Nelson, you've muted yourself. Can you unmute yourself? I don't even see him on the screen. I wonder if he literally dropped out of the meeting. Did we lose him? Okay, so unfortunately, we have lost Mr. Nelson from this meeting at the moment. So how about we move on to Mr. Haley from Sharp Monuments. And if Mr. Nelson is able to get back on, when Mr. Haley's done, we could go back to Mr. Nelson. I don't see him logging in quickly here. So let's do that.
Okay,
Mr. Haley.
Okay.
I'll start your time. Okay, you go ahead anytime you're ready, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Public Works Committee. My name is Warren Haley, and I'm the owner of Sharp Monuments at 1543 Main Street East by the Queenston Traffic Circle. I would like to share with you today that we've been serving the City of Hamilton and surrounding area with memorials for the past 85 years. This is a great accomplishment and milestone. Our desire is to continue providing this great service we offer the residents of Hamilton and area, but this endeavor is now in jeopardy. The intention of the local municipal cemeteries to start selling memorials will have a dramatic impact on our business. Sharp Monuments is a tax-paying business in Hamilton, and now we are facing the reality of paying my competitor money to go against my own business. This scenario is not right. It is completely wrong. I see this action as a real threat to my business. The city claims they are only after 20% of the market share, but in reality, your goal is to take whatever you can get. We know from history that cemeteries getting into memorial sales has an impact on our survival. There was a cemetery group in Hamilton that started selling memorials 25 to 30 years ago, and within 5 years, 2 local monument dealers in the Hamilton area fell by the wayside. All of us in this audience today have a financial goal at the end of our careers, and that is a pension. I don't have a pension plan provided by an employer or government position, etc. I have to rely totally on the equity that I have built up in my business for my future income. This threat of a takedown to my municipal cemetery will have a huge impact on this outcome. The grass always looks greener on the other side of the fence, but let me tell you, it's withering on this side of the fence. Traditional burials are diminishing at a steady decline. Cremation is taking over, and with it, many different ways or options of disposing of the ashes. There will always be a need for memorialization, but nowhere near to what we have seen in previous years. I would just simply ask the members of this committee to sincerely consider these concerns we face, both mine and all who will speak today on this very serious matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I don't see any speakers list, so I will move forward. Is Mr. Nelson back in the meeting? I don't hear him. Marty Langlois, Mountain Memorials and Woodland Memorials, also respecting the cemetery's business plan. Marty, are you online and unmuted? Terrific. So I'll start your timing when you start talking. You'll have 5 minutes, sir.
Mr. or Madam Chair, members of the Public Works Committee, my name is Marty Langlois. I have personally been involved in the memorial industry for over 47 years. We own and operate Woodland Memorials and Mountain Memorials. For 96 years, our company has been designing and manufacturing cemetery memorials and providing related services to families of the Hamilton area. The other delegations have covered the reasons for our presence at this meeting today, so I will bring you up to date on recent events. On February the 19th, the Public Works Committee was presented with a request to approve changes to the cemetery bylaw that involve a new section for green burials and the new sections where humans could be buried with their pets, and memorial benches and memorial niche benches. Because of the changes were billed as housekeeping, the required standard notifications were not sent to the monument companies, and it was only by chance that we found out that they were made by law. When we inquired as to what amendments to the bylaws were, John Parada informed the group that the changes were only housekeeping amendments and had nothing to do with monuments and therefore were not of concern. He told us that the meeting concerning the cemetery going into the business of selling monuments was on March 22nd today, and that we would be notified of the meeting in due course. The bylaw amendments at Public Works Committee will affect the monument companies. Unfortunately, the cutoff date for the delegation was the following day at noon. As a result, no one was at the meeting on February 19th to address the Public Works Committee, and the amendments were thus approved without comment from the monument companies.
We are professional memorialists, and our work includes all types of memorialization products, including monuments, markers, inscription work, as well as bronze markers, plaques, niches, wreaths, and plates, benches, niche units, niche benches, columbarium, statuary, granite pathways, etc. All of the above-mentioned products are items that monument companies routinely manufacture and sell. The Hamilton cemeteries have claimed that they have exclusive rights to sell a major number of these products, thus effectively closing the door to all competition from monument companies. This has dramatically reduced our business over the years. The Green Burial section, with its communal monument, which inscriptions provided exclusively by the cemetery, and the niche benches, the other products that were in the bylaw amendments that you have approved on February 19th, are prime examples of the cemetery taking away our rights to provide memorials to Hamilton families. The business plan and strategy report that was presented to council early in November 2015 said not one word about the cemetery plans to begin selling monuments. That cemetery business plan was passed by council without having any idea that they were approving of the cemetery going into the monument business. With the recent bylaw amendments, once again, the Public Works Committee, City Council, and the monument companies have not been properly notified or consulted. The cemetery just took a large number of potential memorial sales out of last slice of the pie. We stood together before you in late 2019, and we stand here again today to reiterate what was said in 2019. Municipalities have a duty to do their local business, and taxpayers that should not be trampled by an urgency to contribute to the reserve funds. Better management of a city division does not give you any kind of rational reason to put your local taxpayer and the perfectly healthy and secure specialized businesses that they have so carefully built over the years at risk of our business. Going forward, the City of Hamilton Cemeteries business plan and bylaws must be revised so that the city is not involved in the sale, supply, and memorialization products as competitors to the monument companies that have contributed so greatly to the economy. Their cemeteries and the families that we serve. Committee members, just to recap our presentation, I was asked to consider these points. We are taxpaying businesses in the City of Hamilton. Why are we being targeted with punitive policies to further erode our ability to make a living, employ, and provide a service to our customers, to our citizens? Please consider very strongly the point that we have made to your policy of going competition with us. Will make you our regulator as well as our competitor. It is fair enough to be both referee. It is not fair to be both referee and player in this economic equation. It just isn't. Consider the impact of our families, our employees, as you make this important decision. You know, we're a seasonal business.
Sir, I'm sorry, you're at your 5 minutes. Do you just need a couple of seconds to?
I do. We're a seasonal business.
Or do I need to ask? Sorry, sir, just let me finish. I'm just wondering if you need just a couple of seconds or if you need a few minutes. I need to.
No, I just need a couple of seconds.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I'm just going to say that we're a seasonal business. I had to lay off last year. We're going through COVID also. We're by appointment. We need all the business we can get during the summer and the fall. So you stop pouring, the city stops pouring foundations. We can't put a marker in. We can't do anything for 6 months. We don't need any more COVID. To take away a couple of points from a smaller business, such as Winona, you're going to put them under. That's all there is to it. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. I do have a request for a question from Councillor Tom Jackson. Councillor Jackson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek. Marty, good to see you again. I think I met you a couple of years ago with former Mayor Larry Deaney, who was registered to represent you folks. And I'm just dismayed and obviously unhappy that we seem to still be at this impasse today. So obviously, you've seen today's recommendation from city staff. I presume you do not support the city recommendation through you, Chair Vanderbeek. And no, you don't, correct, for the record?
No, I don't.
An alternative in the background information report, Marty, says that for committee's consideration, we do not sell granite monuments or markers, but charge a memorial permit application fee instead. What are your thoughts on that?
That's illegal.
It's illegal?
Yeah.
Can you explain, please, from your perspective, why you
I was told that was you're trying to oppose a tax or a levy on something the consumer's buying. You're acting as a middleman again. You're already getting a permit fee. You're already getting a foundation fee. I can't see where it can be discussed with the other members. I mean,
so Marty, just to conclude, sorry to cut you off. I apologize. You had a closing comment there. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
All right. So Marty, to conclude, you don't support the staff recommendation today. You don't support what was noted in the report as an alternative. Then you just simply would desire the status quo remain as to whatever arrangement we currently have with you, correct?
That's what I would like for myself, yes. Status quo.
And Chair Vanderbeek, Marty will appreciate, I hope, this question as a reminder. Marty, if I recall when I met with you a couple of years ago, there was some issue within your own industry about the warehousing of markers, and it may have been driving up costs or something. Can you maybe just further refresh my memory on that issue? Because I recall that may have been a factor internally within your industry. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Warehousing, we were, as monument dealers in Hamilton, we were asked if we wanted the work that the cemetery was going to sell, and we aren't equipped to do wholesale work as per se. All these jobs that you would be selling, the cemeteries in Hamilton would be selling, would be going to Toronto. You're taking the jobs out of the city. You're taking the jobs away from my people who haven't got 12 months work as it is. So that was my concern at the time. Maybe that was the warehousing. The warehousing you're talking about was the city would have to go to Toronto to have all this work completed.
That's what it was.
The work belongs in the city to our people.
Yes, correct. Thank you, Marty. That's what. So that was a factor. Warehousing and wholesaling that to be out of town businesses that may end up getting the bulk of the business. Marty, good seeing you again. Chair Vanderbeek, I'm just saddened by the fact that it seems a number of years and we're still at this impasse. Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. That was the only question on the list. So, Mr. Langlois, thank you very much for coming forward today. I'm going to go back to Mr. Nelson, who seems to be back online. And sir, you can continue your presentation.
All right, you got point 3, I guess.
I got point 3. What do you mean?
I was told that's where it was left off.
Okay.
Number 4, monument companies do not have this problem because they know the products and have the experience that prevents these problems in the first place. Cemetery staff, on the other hand, have little experience or experience with monuments, and there will be expensive mistakes made for a long time.
Mr. Nelson, you're going to have to turn your video off because your bandwidth isn't enough to process both things, and we're only getting half of what you're saying. So I'll start. You have 2 minutes left of your time, sir.
The market share question has other factors. They need to be given equal consideration. The population base is changing in Ontario and Hamilton. And the effect is an example of things you should be considering before wasting more time and money chasing after sales you are not going to get no matter how hard you try. You spent $160,000 on the Lees report. Nowhere did it say to start selling monuments, or did it advise anyone to attempt to put the local monument companies out of business. 7, you claim that the cash strapped, yet continue to develop new sections that are not market tested. For example, selling lots that allow animals to be buried with people. No other cemetery in Ontario allows this. and the new rules in the bylaw have clearly not thought this through very well. 8, you are opening a green section with no monuments or markers, and all of the inscription are to be sold by the cemetery. This removes any possibility for sales work in this section. The Hamilton cemeteries have already shown that they are not going to buy from local companies. If you vote in favor of this cemetery business plan and allow the cemeteries to sell monuments, then you stand a good chance of losing some or all of the monument companies in Hamilton. The companies here will be forced to donate their remaining revenues to the cemeteries without so much as a tax receipt. If these companies get forced into bankruptcy, this would in effect be expropriation without compensation. Cemeteries are an essential taxpayer supported by the city service. The levy supports parks, police, and snow plowing and other services, and those services are not expected to make money. Cemeteries are basically parks with deceased persons in them. They are part of the park development and should be levy supported, just as these services are. We ask that you return the sale of monuments and memorialization products and services to the professional monument companies who have served Hamilton families so well for all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I do have one person on the speaker list. I'm getting feedback. Can anyone else hear it, or is it just in my ear? Okay, I'll carry on. Councillor Farr.
Just through you, thank you, Madam Chair, just for my own notes. So roughly how many businesses locally and employees approximately, if the worst case scenario come to us here, if we were to accept the recommendation before us, not the alternative, but the recommendation, roughly, approximately. Can the delegate, this delegate or any other, give me that?
Mr. Nelson, do you have an answer for that? Well, sir, you're muted again. You need to unmute yourself if you have an answer.
There's a large number of employees at HGH Granite. I don't know how many are at each place, but you could probably say 3 to 4 employees for each company.
Okay. And was it you, before we lost you, that said through you, Chair, 4 London, Ontario companies went out of business when London did this? Is that what I heard?
It's a larger number than that. There's 4 major cemeteries, and there was probably half a dozen to 8 monument companies went under.
Councillor?
Okay. And just to confirm what I heard, because I didn't see it, it goes back to 2014. You just said that the Lee's report did not recommend, when we said, go out, get some consultants, tell us how we can do better and mitigate the levy impact of our cemetery operations. Lee's never came back and said sell monuments or markers.
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
I'll double check that with staff just to be certain, but thank you very much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any other speakers, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentations to council, to committee, to the Public Works Committee. We'll be moving on to item 9.1. Have I missed something? Oh, I need to receive them. I'm sorry, I need to receive the delegations. I need a mover and seconder to receive these delegations. Sorry, did anyone put your hand up? Councillor Pearson and Councillor Nan. Thank you. And this is to receive the delegations. It should be on your screen soon. It's there now. Councillor Farr wants to speak. I'm sorry, yeah. Councillor Farr, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
You just said we're moving on to 9.1. With these delegates present, can we not deal with this matter right away? I think it's 10. I'm not sure what it is. If through you to the clerk, is there no, or can I move it up?
The clerk's just having a look.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Alicia from Clerks. Yes, if we could just conclude the vote to receive the delegations, and then if committee desires, they could move a motion to consider item 10.2, which is the cemetery's business plan, immediately.
Okay.
So I'd have moved that at the appropriate time if I could get a seconder.
I'll come back to you.
I voted, by the way, on receiving.
Thank you. Yes, that carries the receipt of the delegations, carries 10-0. And so now, Councillor Farr, I'll come back to you, and it's regarding item 10.2, cemetery's business plan, and we'll wait for your motion. You're just moving it up.
Seconded by?
Seconded by someone? Councillor Jackson.
Tom Jackson. Thank
you.
you.
Moved by Councillor Farr and seconded by Councillor Jackson to move item 10.2 up on the agenda for discussion next. The vote's on the screen. Carries 10-0. So it is the next item on the agenda, 10.2, the cemetery plan. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the recommendation in the report and put it on the floor? Councillor Danko, seconded by Councillor Nan. Thank you. Okay, and I presume there will be speakers other than Councillor Farr on this. So I'm just wondering, Manager Kara Bunn is available to answer questions on this report. I'm assuming that we can move to discussion now. So Councillor Farr, you want to lead it off?
Sure, thank you. And I'll be brief. I figured Kara would be here. I think we all really appreciate the work Kara does with both parks and cemeteries. I just want, first through you, Madam Chair, a reminder from Kara. I think I was the one who moved to table this to get this report to come back to us last time we talked about this, and I'm with Councillor Jackson, who I think wants to put it to bed as well. But I thought when we were holding off last, this was on Public Works agenda, I had asked the question, Kara, how many sales of monuments and markers had we made into that point? I think that's why we actually put also in the motion last Public Works when we dealt with this to hold off on any further monument or marker sales. And I thought you said that was negligible or there was none. Is that right? Through you, Chair?
Manager Bunn.
Kara Bunn, Manager of Parks and Cemeteries. Yes, through the chair, that is correct. We had only sold one to date, and we have not sold any since bringing this the first time to council.
And how long were we selling for, Kara, through you, Chair, to that point?
Through the chair, we had only been selling them for a couple months at that point.
So one in a couple of months, if I'm doing my math, this report says we'd make 200,000 annually if we. We're not going to make 200,000 annually selling one every couple of months. Mind you, sometimes these businesses are slow to get started, and I'll take your expertise on the assessment. The Lees report 2014, did it or did it not recommend getting into the monument and marker game?
Through the chair, it recommended that we move towards a self-funded model. And so as part of that, they recommended that we increase all of our revenue opportunities. So providing extra products and services. It outlined a lot of products and services, one of them being green burials, memorials, markers, urns, vaults, graveside services, inscription services, whatever we could leverage as a municipal cemetery.
Through you, Chair. So markers were there, monuments were not, were suggested by the pricey consultants in 2014?
Memorialization was the wording, so it would include both. Through the chair. Thank you.
I would love to ask your opinion of how you feel having once again seen these delegates, I think they're 100% genuine and clearly passionate, and I think fair to say frightened for their families and their employees. I think that has a bit more impact. Just a little editorial here. I won't do that to you, Kara. Especially with, as mentioned by, I think it was Gary, with COVID-19. I believe that the London analogy is true, and that there was a great impact on local business, the marker and monument business there, and with just 4 big cemeteries, we're really into the game here. I do, however, appreciate where this is coming from. This I'm not going to support it, but it's not a reflection of how staff have dropped any balls here. I totally get it. They've been informed by an extensive report that dates back all the way to 2014. In this particular case, and given these exceptional circumstances in our local and worldwide economy, and given truly the organized, passionate, and genuine appeal by mostly the people in the business, but their representatives as well over the course of the last few years as it relates to this and their concerns and fears. I just cannot support it, but I'll leave on a positive note for Kara to smile behind that attractive blue mask, and say that while Lee's in 2014 also mentioned if we want to make money in this game, we should consider green burials. We really didn't focus on that much then. We're much more focused on it now. We've made incredible strides, and I believe incredible dough in short order. I think that just based on feedback I've received to my office and feedback that Kara's received in her staff as well, that this is just going to be a snowball out of control, this green burial game. And more people are going to make this choice in terms of paying homage and honoring their loved ones. I think it's a huge growth industry for us, and it'll more than accommodate for the $200K annually. So I can't support it, but I certainly appreciate where it's coming from. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. And I have Councillor Jackson. Is that right? No? Yes. Councillor Jackson, did you want to speak?
Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek. Very similar sentiments to Councillor Farr, and I'm just a huge supporter of the workload and the tremendous oversight that Manager Kara Bunn has with our parks portfolio and cemeteries. And I'm just so torn on this matter. As a former small business owner per se, I sure as heck do understand the plights and concerns and the small margins of small business that they struggle with in the best of times, and especially during these horrendous times of COVID. Can I just ask for you to Manager Bunn, Kara, in your summary of consultations with the monument builders, one of the questions was the memorial dealers discussed providing revenue generating alternatives to the city to consider instead opposed to offering the sale of monuments and markers. Can you tell me what the outcome of that request and discussion was through you, Chair Vanderbeek, please?
Through the chair, and just pull up my discussion document. So
yep, no rush.
We did go through a few meetings back and forth with a few alternatives. I just want to highlight a few of them for you. So they had asked that for a few things. They wanted to start to pour our monument bases for us and do all of the foundations. Unfortunately, we didn't see that as an opportunity for them to make money because through the legislation, it has to be a full cost recovery. You can't charge more than that. So that was something that didn't work as an alternative. They also looked at proposing other alternatives for us to discuss for as opposed to offering the sale of monuments and markers. But unfortunately, we haven't received any more opportunities from them to date. We did meet with them on several occasions, though. They also suggested some revenue generation for us, or saving for us. And so they had proposed that we reduce our operating costs by reducing our costs by contracting out a lot of the work. And so because of our collective bargaining agreements, that prohibited us from contracting out a lot of the work that our staff currently do. We do, however, already contract some grass cutting at a number of our cemeteries. So we have looked at that already and tried to find ways to save costs. And then I think the last one that just came through, it wasn't in our meetings, but they had brought up also a crematorium. However, in the past, council had not supported us getting into that business. So unfortunately, we did try to work with them, and we definitely do appreciate their concerns, but we hadn't found something that we could both agree to.
Thank you for that thorough response, Manager Bunn. And I think it's important for public consumption, Manager Bunn. You were trying to do your best amongst looking after all of the city assets, green assets that we primarily have under your portfolio. Maybe you should share with the public what your annual costs are for looking after the 6970 cemeteries across the city. And Chair Vanderbeek, my understanding is Manager Bunn was and her team were just trying to find ways to see if they could offset the levy increase to our taxpayers. So maybe Manager Bunn, you could give a little explanation on where you were coming from in trying to assist this way.
Thank you, Kara.
Sure, through the chair. Our overall budget is $4.5 million. That's the cost to operate and maintain all 69 cemeteries. And generally, our average cost from the levy would be around $2.5 million. So we do have revenue that does offset a number of our costs, but we were looking to increase that revenue and reduce that number.
Okay, thank you very much. And lastly, Manager Bunn, I see here where the city, your staff are in agreement that there may be ways the memorial builders were saying that the monument builders, which involve memorials, were saying about our application process left a lot to be desired. And I read here your staff say you're going to do your best to improve. Through you, Chair Vanderbeek, my last question, maybe just an explanation, Manager Bunn, on that matter, please.
Kara?
Through the chair, we've already started that process, and we've been meeting with the monument dealers individually to try and work through that process and improve it and make sure that their experience is more of a pleasant experience and that we can streamline the way we do business with them.
Thanks, Manager Bunn. Chair Vanderbeek, similar to Councillor Farr, I am, anyways, I've said it several times today with the delegates and now in my speech, that if I happen to vote against this, no reflection at all on what Manager Bunn and her entire team attempted to do over the last several years in finding some compromise that may have been workable for all sides while supporting small business, while helping Manager Bunn to help us reduce the impact to our taxpayers and the levy. Thank you very much, Chair Vanderbeek, for hearing me out.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pearson, the floor is yours.
Sorry, Madam Chair, too many buttons, so little time. Thank you, everyone, and I certainly take to heart the comments that are being made and appreciate the presentations today. So just a couple of questions, if I could, to Kara, sorry, is the I'm just concerned, Karen, and I understand totally the clarification or input as far as $4.5 million is the budget, annual budget, to maintain the 69 cemeteries in Hamilton, correct?
Kara?
Thank you for that. And out of that, there's a charge of approximately 2.5 million that goes to the taxpayers. The difference in there, Kara, is obviously some of the revenue that we do get, correct? But there's also the Funeral and Burial and Cremation Services Act. We get funding, do we not? That goes towards some of the maintenance. I thought we did. From the province or the feds.
Through the chair, no, there's no additional money that comes from the province.
What was the account? And maybe my history's gone a little wonky, but I thought there was an account that came forward many years ago where there was some money put towards some of our older cemeteries. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, I think what you're thinking of is the care and maintenance fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't get any of the money from the care and maintenance fund that goes towards this?
Through the chair, we only get the interest off of that. However, the Lees report had asked us to not pull from that interest from that fund for a few years to try and let it build so that we could move towards a self-sustaining model.
Okay, so at some point, will we get a report as to where we are on that and where we want to be as far as self-sustaining?
Kara?
Through the chair, yes, we do hope to hire a consultant to look at the report again because we are, at our 5-year point. So we would like to see where we're at with what changes that they had recommended and what we have done and how much of an impact it has made.
Councillor?
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So I just want to mention that we've also just recently approved the green burials. So with the green burials, there will be no markers. Is that correct? So that's a reduction in what's going to be a business opportunity both for us and for the industry, correct?
Kara?
Through the chair, it's one central memorial. It's a communal memorial, and the rest of the area is left naturalized.
Right. Okay. So I'm not going to drag this out. I want to get clarification on the questions that the points that I had in the previous comments. And again, I also want to reiterate, if I do not support this time, it is no reflection on staff. Staff only went away to do what they were directed to do. And we certainly, I think all of us around this table appreciate the hard work and the diligence that staff put forward in order to bring the best interests to us as assisting taxpayers and keeping their tax dollars down. But right now, I think with the recent approval of the green burials, which now impacts on the private businesses of providing memorials and markers out there, and the fact that it is a very, very limited industry to begin with. It's not like they can expand and sell something else. This is their niche. I will listen to the other comments, but I think at this time I'd rather shelve this and hold off on any direction to have the city go into this. And it doesn't sound like we're going to generate a whole lot of revenue on it anyways. So thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nan.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Vanderbeek. Just a few questions to staff on the report. So in the report, staff had outlined that cemetery staff don't see the city as having a potential to capture a large part of the market share. And I was just wondering through you if staff could comment about how, if we were to proceed with the recommendations, though I'm hearing clearly from some of my colleagues that they're not prepared to do so today, what staff's thoughts on how to avoid the worst case scenario raised by the delegates as it relates to what happened in London in terms of an unfortunate impact on the local businesses?
Kara?
Through the chair, our proposal was to only sell monuments for our cemeteries, not to sell for any other cemeteries. So that would be the first thing. Other options would be to only sell pre-need, or not to sell pre-need, or apologies, to only sell for pre-need, not at need. So when somebody is emotionally involved, we wouldn't be making the sales at that point, only for the pre-need.
And are those, through you, Chair, thank you, Kara, were those the options that then were presented to MBH that were put forward by the city to seek compromise, and the ones that were essentially denied by MBH for that compromise with the city?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, that's correct. We did make those proposals. They still had their concerns about that.
Got it. And then I got my question answered in terms of the costs of running the cemeteries and how much of that is on the levy. So $2.5 million is generated or is the cost to the levy for operating our cemeteries. I guess how would staff through you aim to, if we were to proceed with the recommendations in front of us, do so in a way that would be cost, basically how do you get to the $200,000 a year? I'll just cut to the chase. How did you project out that you would get to about $200,000 a year if we were to proceed with the recommendations before us? Thank you.
Through the chair, so just to clarify, how would we get to the 200,000 for monument sales? Okay, I will give you our calculation. So we got to this calculation by looking at the 10 to 20 requests that we get per month generally through our cemetery office, which would equate into about 120 to 240 requests per year. Assuming that we got half of those sales, based on the number of requests that we get, we thought that 60 to 120 sales per year was a conservative estimate. Based on the average number of monument and marker sales between 2018 and 2020, our admin office recognized the sale of 335 markers and 218 monuments. So a total of 553. So we took 20% of that 553, which equaled 111 sales, which we thought was in line with our estimate. And then financially, we just took an average of the cost of those to come to our number of the $200,000.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Kara. Then when at the point of sale, would it only be the city's availability of monuments and markers that would be available to residents who've come to cemetery staff to seek to finalize their arrangements, or do we also have information available at that time of our local monument and marker producers?
Kara? Through the chair, absolutely. They are welcome to go to any monument dealer. They don't have to deal with us.
And final question, do we promote any of the local businesses for those services at the cemeteries or through the cemetery services? Thank you.
Kara? Through the chair, we don't specifically promote them, but if somebody asks for lists of local businesses, we can provide that, yes.
We do provide it. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Danko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just ask through you to Kara? I remember the discussion on this previously was that there's quite a bit of disruption in the monument industry at the moment with people purchasing from low-cost suppliers online. So can I ask through you to Kara, what is the state of the industry now, and is the city's participation really going to be that much of a disruption versus what we're seeing from other competitors?
Kara?
Through the chair, currently we do already deal with other monument dealers outside of Hamilton and online, and that market capture is about 20% right now. So there is a 20% market capture that the local cemetery monument dealers are not achieving.
Thank you. And just looking at the projection there, the $215,000 in savings, which was council's direction to make, I think, the operation of the cemeteries cost revenue neutral. And every year when we go through our budget process, we spend 4 months going through the city's operational budget, and then we get to the end and we end up with 2.9% goal versus a 3.1% where we're at, and we're trying to find money where to save it. And it always strikes me that we should be making these decisions throughout the year on every time there's a chance for cost savings that comes in front of council, and not just waiting for the budget to try to sharpen the pencil. And in this case, you know, 215,000 is, I think it's roughly 10% of the levy cost of operating the cemetery. So if there's an ability there for us to save our taxpayers money, let's make those decisions now through the year. This is a perfect example. If we're going to look for cost savings, here's a cost savings. Let's move on it. Let's take advantage of that. Taxpayers constantly say you need to run the city like a business. So let's look at opportunities and take advantage of them. That's my opportunity. Sorry, that's my perspective on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do not have any further speakers on the item. So we do have a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Danko and seconded by Councillor Nan. So this will be an electronic vote and it'll be on the screen momentarily. And that is defeated 4 to 6. 6 to 4, depending on how you look at it. Thank you. So now we will go back to the original item on the agenda, which was 9.1. It's a staff presentation, enhancements to the City Hall forecourt update. And it is currently on the outstanding business list. So I'd like to call on Rom D'Angelo, Director of Energy Fleet and Facilities Management, to present, please.
Hi, Councillor. Through the chair, I just want to remind council that, or committee, sorry, that this report was at the Public Works Committee on October 5th, 2020. And committee referred the report back to staff to review the security issues in order to ensure public safety on City Hall forecourt, as well as to review the budget. So at this point in time, I'm going to refer this to Martin Dambo, who's our corporate security specialist, so he can introduce our presenters.
Great, Martin.
Good afternoon, Chair. Martin Dambo, Corporate Security Specialist. I have two consultants that were a part of the original report back in October, Marianne McCricky and Terry Hoffman, and they are going to do a quick presentation for you, and I will be sharing my screen as they go through that presentation.
Hey, Stephen.
Marianne?
Thank you, Martin. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, councillors and staff. We're pleased to present the City Hall forecourt security report. Next slide. The consultant team has consisted of OMC Landscape Architecture. My name's Marianne McCricky from OMC. Zerobit One Security Consultants and ATA architects who provided guidance on the heritage aspects of the building and site. Terry Hoffman from Zerobit is also here today, and you will be hearing from him momentarily. Next slide. The study focuses on perimeter security issues associated with hostile vehicle mitigation. That is, the possibility of intentional entry of vehicles into pedestrian space for malicious purposes. The study included an investigation of options that would increase pedestrian safety, would not be visually intrusive, and would be in keeping with the heritage and the aesthetic character of the City Hall site. Next one. There were other considerations in addition to safety. For this, consultation took place with Public Works staff and representatives from Parks, Horticulture, Landscape Architectural Services, Facilities, and others. Other departments included staff from Art in Public Places and Health and Safety. Next slide. At this time, I will introduce Terry Hoffman from Zerobit One. He is the project security specialist.
Thank you, Marianne. Madam Chair and committee members, good afternoon. My name is Terry Hoffman from Zero Bit One Security Planning Consultants. We are headquartered out of Barrie, Ontario. I'd just like to take a minute here to talk about my background and experience. I've been a consultant and advisor for 20 plus years in the security, physical, and risk management space. I possess the gold standard certified protection professional designation administered by the American Society of Industrial Security. There are less than 450 individuals in Canada that possess this designation. I'm a certified business continuity professional. I possess crime prevention through environmental design by Peel Regional Police. I've acted as an expert witness in both insurance and financial matters and criminal proceedings. Our experience, we've been engaged by over 11 municipalities in these 20-year period. Within those 11 municipalities, we have easily had 70 assignments. A project very similar to this was a Senate committee in the Travelers post 9/11, where we are engaged to protect 22 of the highest risk border crossings from port running and ramming to develop a strategy that was implemented in 2005 to 2008. I myself sat on the Taser incident task force with Immigration Canada in 2007. Some of our clients include RIM, OpenText, TELUS, Fidos, Rogers, a lot of critical infrastructure, Hydro One, Hamilton Airport in Manitoba, Newfoundland Labrador Hydro. Sorry about that. Next slide. So as Marianne spoke, our engagement in 2020 was to assess the risk exposure to a vehicle attack. This is the new type of terror. This type of terror started globally in 2010, and recently it's been in the news in Canada. Crowded space, unplanned, unscheduled, or scheduled space in the forecourt promotes a crowded space in a target. This type of crime, this type of terror involves very little skill, no prep, no money, and it is so easy to do. Within North America in the last 3 years, there's been 17 attacks, 150 deaths, and over 650 casualties. Recently, it's been in the news regarding the recent court case in 2018 of the North York Street attack. I'd like to talk about the assessment and the risk. We developed and found two different asset types. One is an individual's life, and the other is a city's reputation. We put together the impact, which would be high, the loss of a life or a incident occurring and the reputation loss to the city of Hamilton. Both of these impacts result in terrorism, terror, and criminal intention. Next slide. The threat events attached to these two assets, one is penetrative attack and the other is deception. Penetrative attack could easily happen through Main 1, Main 2, and Main 3. These two different target areas will be talked on the next slide, or 2 slides later, I should say. Penetrative attack occurs at all the 5 vulnerable areas, and so does deception. Next slide. Our conclusion from the risk assessment, based on the incidents that we cited in Appendix A within our report, this type of risk is medium to occur. There have been reported incidents and indicators of the threat within the last 3 years, and there is some possibility that the threat will occur. Next slide. Throughout our assessment and our recommendations to mitigate the risk, we use best practices in our industry. Best practices for this type of barrier is PAS 68, no different than UL, ULC for life safety and fire, CSA for electrical. We want to use a best practice. What does PSA involve? It involves 7 different test impact rating types. It's an accredited testing manner. Why does it exist? It enables the specification of engineered protection from a hostile vehicle attack. Next slide, please. As discussed, we have 5 areas of vulnerability. The approach in the recommendations going forward was to actually increase to the fullest capability of the standoff zone. What a standoff zone is, making sure that people that are there in the forecourt, unscheduled or scheduled events, are located on the secure side to protect them from a hostile vehicle attack. So we proposed bullards on the outer perimeter. Bay 1, Main 3, which is a hybrid bullard, removable, Main 2, Main 1, and then Park 1, which again has hybrid removable bullards. Next slide, please. I'd like to hand this back to Marianne.
Thanks, Terry. Once the areas of vulnerability were established at the City Hall site, a number of options were explored. There are many options for managing site security, and as Terry has indicated, much depends on the site and its context. At this site, security bollards were chosen for the following reasons. They were the least visually intrusive. They're suitable for the architectural style of City Hall. They're able to perform the security requirements, and they had the least amount of impact on pedestrian circulation space. This is an illustration of the bollards at Area 1, which was the first area of vulnerability. They suit the heritage value of City Hall. They're set back from the sidewalk, you'll notice, so that pedestrian circulation is not obstructed on the public sidewalk, and so that there's circulation at the bottom of the stairs as well. They are a simple design, and they're not intended to draw unnecessary attention to themselves. Next slide. The same theme is being carried across Main Street with a variation with removable bollards, likely 2 in the middle, that because we heard from maintenance staff that they occasionally require access through the drop curb at this location of the road. Next slide. This next slide is illustrative of Main 3. These views are from within the forecourt outward. Bollards are also recommended at these both locations. However, alternatives were explored that involve the reuse and the modification of the planters that are already existing through the forecourt. Next slide. And the final area of vulnerability is at the back parking lot, where bollards are also proposed with the removable option for maintenance vehicle access. And the next slide. To summarize, the staff recommendation is for bollards at all 5 locations of vulnerability. However, alternatives were also explored for utilization and modification. The existing planters, alternatives were explored to modify or utilize the existing planters. Terry will provide a security analysis now of the risks associated with the approach and the 2 alternatives.
Thank you, Marianne. Madam Chair and committee, I'd just like to speak to the risk profile. We must understand that the threat is real. We need to have the strongest controls in place to mitigate the impact and severity of the potential attack. Using the existing planters that are not past 68 rated, penetrative, those planters could move back 10, 15, 20 feet on impact. In addition, the debris from the planters would be shrapnel flying throughout the area. We took in consideration a design of bollards that would be consistent, that would actually breathe to the point that the forecourt could not be defeated. We must take into account the amount of speed that can be raised on Main Street, either direction, and the amount of speed that can be raised in the rear parking lot at Park 1. It was my recommendation, professional recommendation, to put the bollards in or to recommend these type of controls with past 68. Again, it's a best practice. Today in our business, we are seeing this type of terror, and we are mitigating it as much as possible. Back to Marianne.
Madam Chair and committee, thank you for your time this afternoon. We would now be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Councillor Farr is first on the speakers list.
Just to Terry, through you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Perfect.
sorry. Terry, you said since, was it 2010? What was your stats on North American activity of this type?
Yes, through the chair, stats is about 100. I referred to 157 incidents in North America in a 3-year period, 2014 to 2017. There is no further stats from 2017 onwards. You know,
Hello?
Councillor?
Councillor?
I'm sorry. Terry, were you continuing to speak? We were not hearing anything.
No, I was not. Okay.
So
I was
back to
unable
you,
to find stats in 2018 onwards.
Okay, it's back
All
to you,
right.
Councillor.
Okay, and you know, after we debated this last time, I happened to catch on some Toronto radio. I think it's Jerry Adler, but I don't want to say for sure. Really hammering Hamilton as they do sometimes in Toronto radio. Well, we do them too sometimes, but such are the Argos and the Tiger Cats, I guess. But they really were going hard on us being a nanny state, and you know, you can't protect everybody all of the time, and clearly didn't catch the debate. And didn't factor in the center of governance, the home base for large protests, and frankly, the home base for a growing number of events and fundraisers too. So I just want to, from the expert Terry, who, you know, I mean, if someone wanted to read between the lines, it's clear you're 100% in your expertise behind this, but even almost hypothetically through you, Chair, do you think we ought to then move from City Hall to Gore Park and then another park and then every sidewalk in the city, or stay focused on the center of governance and the forecourt of City Hall? Can you just, in your expertise, disseminate where you draw the line, and maybe Toronto radio will be a little nicer to us if we head in this direction, if we do? Through you, Chair.
Terry?
Yeah, through the chair. Where I draw the line is the exposure being municipal government. I find the forecourt very vulnerable. Based on unscheduled and scheduled events, based on previous incidents in the Hamilton area or in the city of Hamilton and at the forecourt. In today's practice as a professional, when we look at threats and we do threat risk assessments, we take this into consideration on entertainment facilities, post-secondary schools, K-12, municipal government, and critical infrastructure. I referred to 2010. This is when this global terror and this type of attack started. It is increasing every year.
Okay, and through you, Chair, I know in this city, major street closures now factor in barriers to prevent vehicles from the unthinkable. Is that happening elsewhere as well? In Ontario, let's focus on just this area.
Terry?
Is it a requirement of special events planning for large events that include street closures and park closures and that sort of thing?
Yeah, through the chair, it's actually a best practice in most municipalities when they do their street festivals. You know, most cities, you know, the city I live in and cities that I travel to, you'll see in the downtown core, when they open up the bars, they extend their sidewalks. They've actually planned, and they've some of them have put in bollards to, you know, reduce the threat of a vehicle going out of control spontaneously. If I could just answer it, that hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Where do you live?
Barrie, Ontario.
Barrie. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farr, and thank you, Terry and Marianne. I don't have any additional questions. I think we'll just continue on. I need a mover and seconder to receive the presentation, please. Moved by Councillor Farr, seconded by Councillor Collins. Can you second that? Nope, not hearing from him. I think he's Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah,
oh.
I can second that one. Thank you.
Okay. So moved by Councillor Farr and seconded by Councillor Collins. And we need an electronic vote. And this is to receive the presentation. Thank you. That passes 10-0. Thank you very much, folks, for the presentation. And now I need a mover and seconder to approve the recommendations in the report. You want to speak, Councillor Pearson? I just would like, just give me a minute. Do I need a mover and seconder before I can take discussion? Yes, I do. I need a mover and a seconder for this report. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Nan. To approve the report. It puts it on the floor. And now I have Councillor Pearson as a speaker.
Just a question, Madam Chairman, as we're back into committee, I just thought it'd be appropriate to ask a question to staff as well. So just with this moving forward, because City Hall is a designated heritage site, I'm not sure Martin or who's going to deal with this. Does this mean that this has to go to the committee on heritage, or does, because I'm sure permits will have to be acquired, etc. Could you just clarify the process?
Rome?
Through the chair, I'm going to defer this question to Martin or Sam Gargarello because they've been very close to this project and been dealing with other stakeholders within the city.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Martin or Sam, whoever comes on and starts talking, we'll go with it.
Through the chair, Councillor Pearson. Yes, there would be a design process if approved, and that design process would include the lens from the Heritage Committee.
But it's not a matter of getting approval for the installation. It's just a matter of the design getting the approval, correct?
The Heritage Committee would be a part of that design process and the approval, correct?
Okay, thank you for that.
Is that it for you, Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, and the only reason I raised it, Madam Chair, is when they put the planter containers out on the forecourt, there were issues at the Heritage Committee. So I just want to be sure that, we can circumvent whatever is required, but truly understanding the rationale and reasoning for this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Chair Vanderbeek. This will be twice in one meeting that unfortunately I just cannot find my way to supporting the staff recommendation. I want to say right up front once again to Director D'Angelo and to Manager Duarte and to Specialist Dambo and Project Manager Gargarello. Really appreciate all the additional work you've done and getting the consultants, professional consultants' opinion to give comparators from across North America. I don't want to sound naive, Chair Vanderbeek. A few weekends ago, I happened to watch one of my favorite films, Gandhi, and about nonviolent non-cooperation. Again, I don't want to be sounding naive in the 2021 year and the world we live in this new century. And yes, there was the unfortunate damage on Locke Street to small business family-run operations, which was horrible. There was painting on Main Street to fund the police, which was very unfortunate, and again, damaging public property. But to spend close to $700,000, which this option is recommending, I'm just not there with the additional physical barriers that the report and the study is recommending. We've got those concrete flower boxes. Yes, they're a few feet in from the city road allowance and the city sidewalk. But having said everything, and 71 Main Street West is the seat of local government. And over the many, many decades, 160, 170-year history of our city, there's been protests, there's been movements, there's been a lot of demonstrations. And I guess I just want to continue to overall believe that the overwhelming majority of our community and our city are law-abiding. They can demonstrate, they can protest to whatever degree they wish to, hopefully though in a non-violent manner. If they wish to show non-cooperation with whatever the existing policies and bylaws are of the city or issues and programs that the council is dealing with that they may not agree with. But as of today, I'm just not there to, if you will, provide these additional barricades around this most public place, this most august place of our city, being the seat of local government, being City Hall. And so I'll just be recorded as opposed to this recommendation. And again, so much respect to Director D'Angelo and the entire team in Energy, Fleet and Facilities Management. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'm not going to change my view from the last time. I just find spending that kind of money, I think it's $682,000, almost $700,000, to turn our place of government and turn our place for people to come to into a fortress. I find it hard to understand how a vehicle, be it a car or you're saying a heavy truck, can move those planters 10 or 20 feet if they run into them. but I find it hard to understand how a truck or even a car can get up ahead of steam on Main Street and then make a right-hand turn to come in those depressions or over the curb to come into our forecourt. I think the planter box would do a very good job of that, and they're aesthetically pleasing. You put nice plants in them. You know, Lock Street, bullets are not going to stop something like that because they were walking down the street throwing rocks at buildings and rocks at vehicles and tearing mirrors off the cars. So the bullets won't do anything there. The only example I could think of is where we had something similar to this was a school bus pulling up on the front of City Hall about a year and a half ago. And in that case, the school bus never left the sidewalk. It never came to where the bullards would be. And so I just don't want to make Hamilton look unsafe. I'd like that it's a people place. We invite the people to come there. We protect them with concrete planters that it can have beautiful trees and flowers growing in them. So like Councillor Jackson, I just can't support it today. But I would like, and I understand it from, if you just look through the lens of security, it makes sense. But if you look at the aesthetics and the image that it gives of our city, I just have trouble with that, plus the cost. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Nan, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Chair Vanderbeek. I listened really closely to the presentation, and I appreciate having the experts come in and share their advice with us as Public Works Committee. I think that was primarily the key difference between receiving this information previously and this time. And so as a governor on this council and on this committee, when I'm presented with information that clearly states that the risk is real, then I don't see how I can ignore that expert advice in terms of not just from a lens of security, but from the lens of safety and belonging for our residents to feel comfort, to feel safety, and to feel secure coming to their forecourt, their public house, to use the forum of our forecourt as they choose, whether it's for public demonstration, previously organized events and gatherings that we've all come to appreciate taking place in the beautiful forecourt that's outside City Hall. So based on the information that's been presented, I can't ignore the expert advice we've been given. I can't ignore the fact that the bus that mounted the curb had the very real potential of going up higher and further and into people directly. Maybe that wasn't the intention of the individual who was driving the bus that day. However, I heed the advice that although we would like to deny that these kinds of incidences could occur in our city, unfortunately, the escalation of hate-based activity is pointing to increased activity and a lot of it being quite violent. I can't predict the way in which extremism shows up in our city. I can't predict the way in which people are going to choose to weaponize their own vehicles. All kinds of nastiness is going on in the world, and I have no capacity to predict it. So from that perspective, I have to take on the full responsibility of my governing hat and make prudent choices based on the safety and belonging of our residents to their house, their forecourt. And I appreciate staff for bringing forward the report, and I will be voting in favor of the recommendations that are here based on what drove this decision in the first place and the background to why this report was brought to Public Works to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nan. Councillor Farr. Councillor Farr, this is your first time. Your first time speaker on this, correct?
Yeah, I just asked the one question earlier, and I won't beleaguer. Madam Chair, I just remain consistent as well. I wish we didn't even have to deal with this, to be totally honest, but new world. So I'll stick with my previous stance. It's unfortunate and unexpected terrorism, basically, is what really prompted all of this. Obviously, it's been alluded to leading up to this. I wish we didn't need to debate it, but we are. I'd love to be able to say, no, this ain't never going to happen here. Keep that 680 in facilities back pocket. God knows their multi-million-dollar deficit budget could use that dough. However, You know, what the consultant shared with us from Barrie, Zero Bit One, since 2010, it's a horror show that's become a reality in North America, his stats. So we only need to focus on that one space, in my opinion, and that's the one space that is our center of governance. Where our protesters meet, but also where our cultural and religious groups demonstrate. And sometimes, like protesters, their opinions and their demonstrations' content can garner an alternative perspective. And that alternative perspective, it only takes one, let's call it a crackpot, to want to show some dissent in a very ugly and disturbing way. And this solves that problem in our one and only center of governance in the city, where these things happen, a growing number of these events happen, and also special celebrations and fundraisers occurring. I can think of Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. It's one of those topics, once you start talking about it, you really, probably want to follow through. I'm not suggesting in any state where every sidewalk in the city has these $680,000 barriers that can stop a truck, but certainly, at least by creating one space, we can point to that safer area for others who do want to get together in the future in the Hammer. So I will remain supportive, but I really appreciate the comments on both sides, and of course, staff and the consultants' work, and of course, Martin's work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's the end of the first-time speakers. We do have a second-time speaker, but I would like to pass the chair over just for a minute to Councillor Nan so that I can say something.
You got it. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Councillor. Several of my points have already been voiced, of course. And I want to thank staff and the consultants for bringing this forward. And I absolutely understand that this is a lot of money, but I would like to put it in perspective. So a few years ago, Council of the Day decided to preserve and protect the heritage building of the City Hall that I'm sitting in at the moment. It was $70 million to do that. This is $700,000, that's 1%, to keep it safe. And it only takes one car. And someone who feels that they have the right to make their point by speeding off of Main Street and ending up in the middle of our forecourt and potentially ruining, if not deleting, several lives in the meantime. I've seen bollards like this. They have them in other places. They're not unattractive. In fact, they're better than a whole wall of flower boxes when you look at them. I think we have a responsibility to have a safe place where people can express themselves, where they can gather. And as Councillor Nan said, and others, where they can feel safe. And we've been criticized because people can't come to the forecourt and feel safe. So I don't really want to spend the money either, but I'm going to support it. I'm going to support it because I think it's our duty. And maybe we should have done that when we renovated City Hall, but it wasn't a subject of discussion then. But it is 1% of the money that we spent to maintain this center of government in the middle of the city of Hamilton. And I feel that we don't have any other choice. So I will be supporting it. And I'm going to take the chair back and I will move to the second-time speaker, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and certainly all the comments are being made for and against. I certainly am a total sympathetic to both sides. But as I sit here, and I'm hearing the comments, as I sit here, we are the heart of democracy, which also means we have a responsibility to make sure our citizens are protected. And we all know how many different events are held in our forecourt. pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID once we get through this. And, you know, there are a lot of great events as fundraisers that go on, protests, whatever they may be. Sitting here today, I would really, I couldn't even express how bad or how sad I would feel if within the next while we did not support this and something drastically horrible happened on our forecourt that could have been prevented. You know, our costs, as was raised by Madam Chair, is, you know, 1% of the whole cost of the renovations of City Hall. You know, that cost, if we don't do it today, that cost is only going to increase. And it'll be a greater responsibility, and it could increase to the point where not only do we have the situation where we will need to put them in, but we could have a death or more that that we would have to live with forever and a day. And I just think that you know, we can bury our heads in the sand, or we can be responsible. And it's a responsibility to all of our taxpayers who visit, who use our forecourt, who come at all times of the day and night, and want to feel safe, and they should be. And I for that reason, will be supporting this going forward. And I commend staff for what they've done, and to the consultants for the prototype of what's being proposed, because it does certainly lend itself to the architecture and the character of City Hall, and what Stanley Roscoe as the architect had proposed as being a very futuristic building, and we're continuing that. So I will support this now. I think that we prolong this out, it's not going to get, it's never going to leave us. And I truly believe that it's a very unfortunate time in society where, you know, it could be one, it could be many that feel that, you know, they don't have any sense of loss of what they could do to damage or destroy others in our community. So I think we have to do everything we can to protect our seat and our heart of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. I have no further speakers. This was moved and seconded by Maria Pearson and Narinder Nan. I'm sorry. Sorry, Councillor Nan. I got your name back. I got the vowels backwards. Anyway, the vote will be on the screen momentarily. It is an electronic vote. Is Councillor Nan still here? I can see she's having, did she? Okay, great. It's just her bandwidth, yep. And that carries 8-2. Thank you. Okay. Item 10.1 is the standardization of fleet equipment and parts and single source suppliers. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations? I think I saw Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson is moving it. And I need a seconder. Councillor Farr. Thank you. Is there any discussion respecting item 10.1? Seeing none, we'll go straight to the vote. It'll be on your screen in a minute. There it is. And that carries unanimously. We've with item 10.2, the cemetery's business plan. So we'll be moving forward to motions. Item number 11.1 is the installation of speed cushions on Brigade Drive and Delancey Boulevard in Ward 7. Councillor Pauls, could you please introduce your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, installation of speed cushion on Brigade Drive and Delancey Boulevard, and it is on Ward 7. I won't read all the whereas, but I'll go be resolved. This is second by Councillor Danko. I want you to know that that area I had I had over 60 people in the community sign a petition, and it's much needed. So therefore, be it resolved that the staff be authorized to install up to 5 speed cushion on Brigade Drive, Hamilton, at the cost not to exceed $35,000 to be funded from the Ward 7 Capital Infrastructure Reserve. 108057. That the staff be authorized and direct to install up to 3 speed cushion on Delancey Boulevard, Hamilton, at the cost not to exceed $21,000 to be funded from the Ward 7 Capital Infrastructure Reserve. Number 108057. And that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents to install speed cushion on Brigade Drive, Hamilton, which such term condition in the form of satisfactory to the city solicitor. Sorry for my voice, I'm losing my voice, so I've had a terrible cough, so. But yes, this area is much needed. About a year and a half ago, I got a call from one of the residents and just was begging me for help. And finally, I told him we'll get some petition going, and he had over 60 member signs saying they need help. So I really appreciate you helping me with this and get it resolved. Thank you, Councillor Danko, for seconding it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Pauls, seconded by Councillor Danko. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, we'll go straight to the vote. And it's on your screen. And that's carried unanimously. Item 11, private tree giveaway for Ward 8. Councillor Danko, would you like to introduce your motion, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moved by myself, second by Councillor Collins, if he doesn't mind.
Yep, good with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, got back to the motion. Where was it? Here we go. So whereas the City of Hamilton has declared a climate emergency, whereas increasing the urban tree canopy by providing trees for planting on private property has many environmental benefits to the residents of Ward 8 and the wider city, and whereas private tree giveaways are not currently funded under existing tree planting programs, therefore be it resolved, A, that the supply and distribution of approximately 200 small native trees at a cost of $2,715 be funded from the Special Capital Reinvestment Reserve account, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute all of the required documents. Just briefly, this is following on the good work. I think it was started by Councillor Collins, actually, and Councillor Nan has done this, and I know there's some others that are kind of thinking about it. But as the city forestry policies come forward, we're looking at increasing the canopy within the city Hamilton, and one of the major issues that's been identified is actually getting trees planted not just on public property, not just in city right of way, but also on private properties. So through this giveaway, we're hoping to encourage Ward 8 residents to get a tree, to have that planted in, so for example, in their backyard or on their private property, to increase that tree canopy in Ward 8. Thank you.
Thank you. So, is there any discussion on this? Not seeing any. So we have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Danko is moving it. Councillor is seconding it, and the vote is on the screen. And that carries unanimously. Item 11.3, Cornelius Park stair improvements in Ward 8. Councillor Danko, would you like to introduce your motion, sir?
Thank you, and moved by myself, and if Councillor Pauls wouldn't mind seconding this, thank you, Councillor. So whereas the Captain Cornelius Park at 150 Mountbatten Drive is an active community park in Ward 8 with pathways that promote active transportation through the community, whereas access to this park includes stairs from Rolston Avenue to the Westview School, a Hamilton Wentworth District School Board property, and whereas these stairs promote connectivity to both the park and school, and the installation of a new railing on the existing stairs would support resident use. Therefore, be it resolved that $45,000 from the Ward 8 Capital Reinvestment Reserve to implement the installation of a new railing to the existing concrete stairs located at Captain Cornelius Park along Rolston Avenue, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute all relevant documentation. So again, just quickly, this is an initiative that came from the community members that live in the neighborhood requesting a railing on this set of stairs that's already in place there. The stairs, just for committee's benefit, are adjacent to the Westview Elementary School. So this was some discussions that we've had between myself and Ward 8 and 14 trustee Becky Buck. And she was really instrumental in the discussions with the school board because portions of this are on school board property. But the stairs lead to the Captain Cornelius Forest Trail, which was initiated by Councillor Whitehead, and it's an accessible trail through the woodlot, beautifully done by park staff, and it just needed a little bit better connection to the street, and especially seniors and elderly people in the community with some mobility challenges find it hard to access those stairs without a railing in order to get to the accessible path, which they enjoy very much. So this will help remedy that situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? I see none. So the vote will be on the screen. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 11.4, it's at the intersection of Upper Gage Avenue and Mohawk Road East, Ward 6 and 7. Councillor Jackson, would you like to introduce your motion?
Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek. Moved by myself, seconded by Ward 7 Councillor Esther Pauls. Whereas there's a large senior population that utilizes the signalized intersection of Upper Gage and Mohawk East. Whereas there are ongoing safety concerns from the area residents related to driver behavior at this intersection, therefore be it resolved. The transportation operations and maintenance staff be directed to undertake an evaluation of the intersection of Upper Gage and Mohawk East to consider safety enhancements that could include community safety zone designation possibly, speed limit reduction, additional warning signs, and traffic signal enhancements in consultations with both Councillor Pauls and myself. And if I might briefly, Chair Vanderbeek, I want to thank both for this motion and the next one, 11.5. I want to thank once again traffic staff that have just been wonderful, starting with Director Edward Soldo, Manager Mike Fields, Superintendent Dave Ferguson, and of course our own LC Alicia Davenport, who always procedurally helps me with the motions. They have assisted me tremendously with the language of the motion, and I thank them for traffic staff for their support. This came from last summer. I happened to visit during COVID times, safely masked, superintendents of one of the apartment buildings in the area, Vince and Roberta Marino, and they put up a little drawing of showing how with the close to 1,000 seniors approximately that between 4 or 5 apartment buildings primarily that live within a few hundred feet of this extremely busy intersection, Chair Vanderbeek. They were showing me on a diagram which they mapped out, which I passed on to traffic staff, how maybe, for example, entering the intersection from all directions could possibly be designated a community safety zone, which would increase fines for violators, possibly reduce the speed entering and exiting within a few hundred feet, the speed to 40 kilometers, possibly additional signage. And also, Chair Vanderbeek, I also, through project manager Chris King in traffic, I've got a companion work in progress that's occurring where the traffic island just east of this intersection in front of the Food Basics Plaza and across from East 42nd, I've asked for the feasibility of a pedestrian signal there, because many of the seniors in my ward, I wish they would all come to the full signalized regulated intersection of Upper Gage Mohawk to cross and to go back to their homes and their apartments. But many of them are taking a little shortcut, a little shorter version to get across Mohawk, which is busy enough, and they're using the city traffic island in front of the Food Basic Plaza. So as a companion to this motion, staff are also working at looking at the feasibility of an intersection pedestrian signal there as well. So, Madam Chair, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Pauls. Upper Gage is an extremely busy corridor, 25,000 plus vehicles a day. It's the last major north-south corridor off the link before you get to Dartnell Road. So I'm just trying to be as proactive as possible, and I'm looking for committee support. Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, and we'll go straight to the vote then.
I just wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Pauls, go ahead.
I just want to thank Councillor Jackson, because I've had many calls in the last year and a half, actually, about that intersection. And when Councillor Jackson said he had the same, I was all for it. And I talked to Mike Field, and we have that same problem just about 100 meters before that light. There's a lot of seniors that cannot cross. So we definitely need this. And so I want to say thank you for bringing it up, Councillor Jackson. And I hope we get it resolved. Thank you.
Okay, and the vote is on the screen. And that carries unanimously. Item 11.5, installation of calming measures at various locations throughout Ward 6. Councillor Jackson, you have a motion?
Thank you, Chair Vanderbeek. Moved by myself, seconded by the hardworking Ward 5 Councillor Chad Collins. Installation of traffic calming measures at various locations in Ward 6. Whereas residents are requesting the installation of speed cushions on various roadways throughout my ward via petitions and neighborhood engagement to address roadway safety concerns as a result of speeding and cut-through traffic. Therefore, be it resolved that the TOM department staff, that's traffic staff, be authorized and directed to install traffic calming measures on the following roadways as part of the 2021 traffic calming program, which means, Madam Chair, if approved, all of these locations will be part of the work plan this year. First of all, Anson Avenue from Upper Ottawa to Carson Drive. Number 2, Kingsley Drive from Beacon to Broker. Number 3, East 45th from Mohawk to 10th. Number 4, Templemead Drive from Tudor Place to Ingrid Court. Number 5, Queen Victoria Drive in its entirety. It's a ring road. Number 6, Royal Vista Drive from Upper Gage to Templemead. Number 7, Quaker Crescent in its entirety. Number 8, Everest Street from Templemead to Upper Ottawa. And that all costs associated with the installation of these speed cushions at the identified locations, Madam Chair, throughout Ward 6, be at a total cost not to exceed $259,200, be funded from my ward capital reinvestment discretionary account and my Ward 6 capital reinvestment reserve. And by the way, there's a contingency built in there so that if there's any cost overrun, it'll be covered, doesn't have to come back to committee. And lastly, Madam Chair, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized and directed to execute any required agreements and ancillary documents, such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the City Solicitor. And just briefly, Madam Chair, it's not too often I get a headline before the actual committee today, which I got in the daily newspaper, and I'm pleased with it overall. And I just want to say that we as a committee and council, we know from even last year during COVID time, it just seemed traffic complaints were increasing across our entire community, and they were there before COVID, and it just seemed that they were exacerbated during COVID. And I have done my best working with traffic staff in the community to come up with on particular streets and particular neighborhoods across the entire East Mountain community as a whole, what are the best solutions preventatively, proactively, to just calm traffic down and just to provide as safe an access as possible, primarily for pedestrians, kids, young families using their streets and neighborhoods. And traffic staff have said publicly many times, they've reiterated that one of the most effective tools are the installation of speed cushions. And all of these requests were not top down from me. They were grassroots, bottom up, from streets and neighborhoods via petitions, via organizers, leaders in the community, in their neighborhoods, simply saying that the cut through traffic, Tom, and the ridiculous amount of careless driving has to be curtailed to some degree. And these 8 locations will follow already this term and 5 previous other residential side streets that I've had your support and traffic support to install. So, Madam Chair, to conclude, speed cushions in my Ward 6 for many neighborhoods are very, very popular and have become, if you will, the top priority of doing their most effective best to slow down traffic and hopefully get more motorists to be more responsible in their behavior driving through. Thank you, Madam Chair. Seconded by Councillor Collins.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion on this? Oh, Councillor Farr.
Yeah, Jackson, I'll tell you, he's pretty good at putting this part of the 2021 program in his motions. But on this one, I got to ask, and through you to Dave Ferguson, if he's still with us, I'm assuming he is, probably waiting around for these motions. I'm very supportive, absolutely. I'm sure it'll get unanimous support. But also, I have speed hump work that's 2 years out, so it would be prudent to me to ask. Nothing being bumped in the program, the 2021 program to 2022 or beyond in any other ward if we approve this here today, Dave? Can you hear me?
Is it David or Mike?
Anyone.
Who's taking this?
I can
I ask respectfully.
Oh, Edward. Edward, do you want to take this?
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair, Edward Solo, Director of Transportation Operations and Maintenance. These would be sent out as part of our overall contract this year. So to answer your question directly, Councillor Farr, it is part of the overall tender that we're putting out, and nothing is being bumped that's already been planned.
Okay, good. So we're just adding 34 new speed humps to the contract. Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to look at what might be a holdout for the last couple of years and maybe have an amending motion to also include those wonderful words that Councillor Jackson is very good at sliding in there to get the work done in an expeditious fashion, because it is, as Tom, as Councillor Jackson has said, very popular and always, at least in Ward 2, born of the engagement and the petitions that, as Tom has seen in Ward 6. So very supportive. Love that answer. I almost didn't want to ask because I respect where this is coming from, but good to know that my speed humps can get all done this coming season. Thanks so much. I'm very supportive.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. Okay, I have no one else on the list, and so the vote is on the screen. And again, item number 11.5. And that carries unanimously. So we're on to general information business. We have item 13.1. We will have another item Councillor Ferguson wants to bring forward. So I'm going to just do item 13.1 and then we'll move to Councillor Ferguson's item. This is amendments to the outstanding business list. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the amendments to that outstanding business list? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Marula. Thank you. Is there any discussion on any item? Seeing none, the vote will be on the screen. Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. Councillor Ferguson, you were wanting to raise an item about the last Waste Management Advisory Committee meeting. The floor is yours, sir.
But it's about the last planning meeting, quite frankly, and we have a large number of, Councillor Farr is attracting a lot of new developments downtown and some large towers and many, I believe hundreds, and Councillor Farr can correct me, new residential units that are going up in the lower city. And the last two big ones is that Caroline and King and John Street down near, well, I want to say near the medical arts, sorry, I would define it. And, we're talking, we've noticed that the diversion rate of recyclables is going in the wrong direction. And the culprit we've heard for, well, I've heard it for 10 years now, is multi-residential, because they don't have the capability to have 3 different storage areas. And how do you make it easy for tenants or condominium owners to dispose of it? And so with these towers coming in place, I asked the question about how we're going to make it easier for tenants and condo owners to separate their waste and have 3 diversions, one for waste, one for containers, one for fibers or newspapers. And developers suggested there is technology now with you just use the same chute for all 3, but you push a button, 1 of 3 buttons at the top, depending what you're putting down the chute, and a motor turns a little chute at the bottom and deflects it into the right spot. But they said they're waiting for a report from Public Works on this. And so I called some Public Works staff and asked what the status was, and they said they're not recommending it because of the cost of the developer. And I'm not sure I got that right. And so a question, I'll start with the general manager, and he can deflect it off to Craig or anybody else he wants to. When can we expect that report on diversion, making it easier for condo owners or apartments to separate their garbage and so to improve our diversion rate beyond the 38% that we're at now?
Thank you, Dan McKinnon.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to, much like the deflector at the bottom of the chute, I'm going to have to deflect that over to Craig for an update. I'm unfamiliar where we are with it.
Craig.
Okay.
Craig
Good
Murdoch.
afternoon, Madam Chair. Craig Murdoch, Director of Environmental Services. So, Councillor Angela will be jumping in and helping with some of the answers. But you are right. This is an opportunity that we shouldn't pass up, because it has been well known that multi-res locations have had the lowest diversion rates of all places in the city of Hamilton. So we were going to be bringing in a report on the waste management design criteria for townhouse properties in May, and then we were going to be bringing in one for multi-res properties, high-rise multi-res, in the fall as part of phase 2. So what we're going to do now is we're going to combine them to save some time, which means that in early fall we'll be coming back with a report to council to endorse our design criteria for high-rise as well as townhouse developments. Staff have been meeting with the it's called the Development Industry Liaison Group, which is we're participating on it with PED and the development industry to make sure that what we're recommending is viable and can be achieved by the developers. Some of the concerns that were raised earlier is an inability to meet some of the intensification targets. But as you point out, a single chute with a diverter on it can alleviate those issues. Now, one of the pieces of the puzzle that are still missing for us is we don't know what's going to happen when the Blue Box program is taken over by the province, because we don't know if they're going to be going single stream or dual stream, because that would also affect the high rises, because do you divert in 4 streams or do you divert in 3? Because right now we would have garbage, green cart material, and fiber material, and container material. So there's 4 streams. But if they go to a single stream Blue Box program, then we would have 3 streams in those apartment buildings. But like I said, we're going to be talking with the development industry, making sure that what we would like to do is achievable, and then we'll be reporting that back to council for endorsement.
Okay, but I can assure you, Craig, the development industry will oppose it because there will be extra costs to them. They'll need probably a little larger room to hold 3 containers rather than 1 that they have now. But I don't want to miss this opportunity. these are two massive developments, and we let them get by and have no place to store blue bin or green bin or regular garbage or containers. That's going to be a real opportunity lost. And you know, it was actually the developer that suggested the deflector bin at the bottom and going with one chute. I believe it was submitted that it probably wouldn't be appropriate to put the compost down, like the green bin material, because it would stick on the way down. You get odor problems. They might have to find a different solution for that product. But you know, as we know, a lot of people aren't putting green bins out anyway. The big one is the blue bins, both the containers and the and the fibers. And so I'm just worried if we wait till May. We've approved these applications, so they're going forward. And you can bet your bottom dollar they're going to have their site plan applications in shortly, because time is money in that industry. And you may miss the opportunity by May to do that. It might be appropriate to have you or Angela just alert planning that this is coming. And if they can hold off approving the site plan for those two developments, it's unlikely to get it done that fast anyway. Until that report's cleared council, I would appreciate that, because I just don't want to miss that opportunity. Hundreds and hundreds of units. They're not only going to have one chute, and you can bet your bottom dollar, because we don't make it easy for the condo owners to just throw everything down one chute. Is there a possibility you could alert planning and economic development staff, maybe the director or the and you know who's in looks after the site plans, that this could be coming?
Yes, definitely we can speak to them. We've been speaking to them a lot regarding the townhouses, so we know who we need to go to. I don't know where those two apartment buildings in Ward 2 are at in the approval process, and whether or not they're engineered drawings, it's too late to change, but we'll have
Well,
those
they just got
conversations.
rezoning, Craig, 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So they haven't got it. I'm sure they've started structural drawings, but that could be changed pretty quickly. And you're not asking for any more chute space. You're just asking for the spot for the containers to go. And I'm sure that could be it, but just don't miss it. I'm worried waiting till May might be too late, but it is not that far off. As long as it's not the fall, because then you'll miss it. And
Yeah, and just to clarify, it is the fall that we were planning on bringing that report back for high rises. So, but we'll talk to planning and see what we can do for anything that's in the pipe now.
But I thought I heard you say that you're going to advance that, bring townhouses and the high rise now in May. Did I misunderstand that?
That was going to be for the townhouses. If we were going to combine the report, then it would have to be the fall, because we have to start the consultation with the development industry, which we haven't done on high rises yet.
Okay, I'll bring it up again at planning tomorrow, that your timeline, and that you'll be in touch with them. I don't want to take any more time for this meeting, because it's already coming up on 5 o'clock. So thanks for your answers, and just keep our antennas up. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. And that's all the speakers that I see. So we'll go to a vote. What are we doing with this? It's just direction?
It's just direction. There's
Just
no
don't do anything, just direction. Okay. Thank you. And may I please have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Don't all jump now. Councillor Pearson.
Oh, I'll jump in on that one.
Okay, and Councillor Collins. And the vote will be on the screen in a minute, so don't go wait till you vote. And that carries unanimously. Surprise, surprise. And thank you for attending.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, for your support.